Welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. My name is Brandon Kane, and I do appreciate you as ever for tuning on in here at the Nest as we've got ourselves a breaking news coming down the wire today as the Seattle Seahawks are making a flurry of moves here with free agency on the horizon starting next week. I know technically it's Wednesday, but it's truly starting on a Monday. That's when you get the tampering period. So these moves being made just ahead of that period and major moves at that. I don't know if we're going to eventually come to call this Black Tuesday. I don't know. It doesn't have much of a ring, does it? But Will Dissly, Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, all cut in totality today. Getting free and clear on the money across the board there. There is an interesting part to this. Maybe it wasn't as unexpected. A lot of people out there have been thinking that this was going to occur and happen. So not a shocker. Not one that just is going to hit people unaware. And with it, the Seahawks clear a mighty amount of cap space to the tune of $25 million. This now puts them in a real good territory as far as even up against the likes of the rest of the NFL at this point. They, with the cap increases and with these cuts as they've made them now, are sitting in a pretty good position. They're not upwards of the most in cap space, but they're sitting in a good position to make whatever moves that they deem fit they want to go out there and make. Let's talk a little bit about these guys and why these moves were made, though, before we get a little bit to the savings and maybe what this means as far as going forward, because I think it's always good to understand why the trades or moves are being made. And certainly when it comes to Jamal, this is probably the least surprising of these three. That being, of course, a little bit surprising in itself because you kind of gave up the most capital for this guy. The Seahawks back in 2020, how long ago has it been, made the trade for Jamal Adams on the precipice of training camp. And they made this trade because they were in a position where the safety position you didn't feel great about. And then you also had maybe a little bit of worry with your pass rush and that you didn't think you quite maybe had enough at that time. Of course, Jamal was just the type of player that would have appealed to Coach Carroll when he came out of LSU. Everybody was talking about the alpha he was, about the leader he was there with those LSU teams when he was playing there, and he was a very complete player coming out of college. He was not just a blitz boy, as some people have put him into that box for, which, you know, he was always a much better player than that. That was always a harsh indictment of him, in that that's what he did maybe at his best, but he had a lot of other things that he did bring to the table. And that's why you made the trade for him. The Hawks, of course, though, you know, made probably it's going to go down in the worst trade in their Hawk history for the amount that they gave up for Jamal, 2 first-round picks, a third-round pick. He came in that first season, and the Seahawks, man, they used him like you when you get a new car and you just start, every time you're getting that car, you're going 150. You know, every time you're putting that pedal all the way down. They blitzed him at a 13% rate in that first season here when he was with Seattle, and that was off of a 6% blitz rate with the New York Jets. This was part of how he then got that sack record as a safety, a defensive back, and with his 9.5 sacks that year. That was a sack record for the safety position, and that's really how he did it. It was really by a volume status as much as anything else. He did get his share of sacks, and he was able to create some pressure, but it wasn't on the back of being efficient or effective. And in that first year, we also got a real bright view to 2 other things that were going to be commonalities of Jamal going forward. One of which being that him in space, him back in coverage, him in deep coverage is not a pretty picture. And that definitely ended up causing quite a few issues there in that year in coverage and big plays over the top, things that, of course, was against kind of a cardinal sin against Coach Carroll's defense. And then the injury bug also started to bite him just a little bit that year as well, as he was only able to play in 12 games. And the injuries became the thing that started to mount over time. And I think that was the thing that really started to take him down, especially in the coverage element. Even in that year, some of the big plays he gave up, like the Cooper Kupp play deep down the field in the playoff game, was one where he was not at 100%. And this was a guy that coming out was, I think, the 5th highest graded safety or defensive back, I think, just period, by PFF in his final year in college. You know, he had a share of interceptions. It was this thing of him not being able to play. It was not as much as what you thought you were getting when he came in. Injuries robbed this guy a lot of who he was. He just kept getting more injuries and then getting more robbed of that quickness, maybe that suddenness that he was able to bring to play. Could not turn on in last year. It was really brutal coming off that major injury, an injury that has costed many players their careers. And sadly with Jamal, I do wonder a little bit if this is going to be one that might take him down in that same kind of way. It's a devastating injury. We think in modern science, like everything gets cleaned up and these guys bounce right back to 100%, no problem. But it doesn't always work that way. And maybe he just needed another kind of extra year to get the legs back under him. He's not terribly old. You've had him here right in the middle of his prime thinking you were going to get this, grade A production, and you just didn't do it. The real reason going forward, though, you couldn't take the risk with the money. You need to clear this cap space. And here's the thing with this. I'm going to speak to this with Quandre as well. Jamal's really not a fit to what this new defense is going to do. The fact that he blitzes is really nice. That would fit to what this defense is do. The fact that sometimes you can have him play a little bit like a linebacker, that fits maybe a little bit to what this defense can do. But the defense is a cover 2 shell high. That's how you start out. Cover 2 shell high. So even in your Vic Fangio, Denver years where he's running the system at its maximum effectiveness, he's still going to be running cover 2 40% of the time post snap, which means that you're going to have Jamal Adams, maybe up to about 40%, 35%, going into cover 2. And as we've seen over and over on the tape with him, doesn't really almost kind of matter whether he was injured or healthy. That's just not him. And he should be in a better fit for a defense that has him more down around the line of scrimmage if he can hold up right now from a physical standpoint. But the Hawks made this move with him. Not surprising. The one surprising part that did come up from this was that instead of spreading the cap hit over 2 years by making him a post-June 1st designation, they just outrighted it. So that means that the savings go much more further down for this year, but then they do set themselves up into much better shape than for 2025, which is a little bit of why I think they do that here and the now. It's less about a move of going for it here in the moment, which is how I think a lot of people are going to read these moves being made as, they're now pushing to try to go and make it happen this year. It's going now. They feel like they can make it happen this year. I don't think that they're throwing this year out and the potential of competing this year, but I think it's as much as making sure that you position yourself so that if this thing can ignite a little bit this year, that you've got the fire ready for next year in the feasible cap space in order to get the job done. So this was really about that. You're taking the full hit this year. Once that's done, Jamal's off the books. 2025, you're free and clear of him in that deal. But it did remove down the savings on this. In fact, it turns out that Quandre Diggs is really the guy that ends up bringing you the most savings here between these three guys. And another one that was a little bit surprising, but another one that's very similar to the Jamal Adams situation where you have a guy that's a real true single high free safety at this point. Early in his career, he bounced around between slot and strong safety and eventually settled into free safety. But, no, geez. You're not happy about Quandre going? Okay. Well, I'm sorry about that. I know, it's brutal. Everyone's a little sad about it. I think everyone is. Yeah, me too. So Quandre is definitely a guy who came in here and really ignited a defense when he first walked in the door in 2019. That defense was needing some glue on the back end. They needed a playmaker on the back end. And he had been with Detroit and been a real fine player for them. But it was really when he came here, I think we got to see the best of who Quandre Diggs was as a football player. And he walked in and he was a little bit of an interception machine when he came in the door in that year. That defense did come together. There was a little bit of a glint maybe that we could make some moves that year. But in regards with both him and I believe it was Jadeveon Clowney that year, two of our better defenders, as the year went along, they got wore down. I think he had a high ankle sprain. Jadeveon, I think, had the hernia issue that season. And so you weren't really able to really go full go in the playoffs, I think, defensively like you would have liked to have gone if he was at his best shape. But he was awesome to the defense that year when he came in. You only gave up a 5th-round pick for him in a trade deadline deal. And he came in and through his years here in Seattle gave you a very close player at times that was very, very close to a little bit of what you got from Earl Thomas. He's not Earl Thomas. He didn't have Earl Thomas's pure speed and absolute, just unadulterated ranginess, but he did have some very close elements to that. He played the game in a very similar way. He was willing to run the alley and come down and hit you. He was willing to lay hits in the secondary if he had the opportunity to do so as well. So he was a player that gave you a variety of different little things within it. Certainly there's been some issues as we've gone down the road, maybe from some fans in regards to his willingness and want to tackle, ability to tackle. But Earl had his moments too where he had some missed tackles. Sometimes when you're just at that size and you come up to a guy who's 6'1", going 235 downhill at you, it just gets a little bit tough to find a way. You need some help. You're just trying to corral him on up. But Quandre this past year didn't get as much of the playmaking coming back into things. The interceptions dipped down heavily from 4 to 1 this year, and every single year he's been here, he's been at least good with bringing the picks, and that stuff just kind of went away. It's odd too when you look at him in retrospect to wonder about what Quandre could have possibly done. I had a great back and forth with him, and shout out to him with having some great discussion on Twitter last year and putting a video together on a play that he made against the Raiders, where they were in quarter half, and he broke off his responsibility to jump the route. It was just such an impressive play, in my opinion, because of how hardened I know the rules are with Coach Carroll about staying over the top, especially when that's your elemental responsibility on the play. And Quandre spoke to why he was able to jump that route, why he made the decision to jump that route. And so often he was playing that Earl Thomas role where, 30, 35 yards down deep center field, he's got this real basic job of, I've got to cover deep. That's my job, and I'll do it well, and I'll take away post routes. But it doesn't give as much of that impact to make those kind of plays like the one they did in that Raiders game, where he could kind of jump off the responsibility, kind of freelance to what he was seeing. And you always wonder a little bit if he had maybe a little bit more of that, ability to show. But doesn't seem like McDonald and company felt like that was necessarily something he could bring at this point, and that they do feel at this point he's that pure free safety. And so you're looking right now in this defense for guys at the safety position that can do both skills. But when you're looking at the draft, when you're looking at free agency, you have to look at it through this particular view, that the guys who are a free safety has got to be able to come down in the box and operate like a strong safety. The guy that's a strong safety has got to leave the box at times and be able to play center field, cover two. He's got to be free and comfortable in doing both of those two different items. It's absolutely so very important on this. So I would say that So I would say that this one made sense with both of these two guys in regards to this. Sorry, I got a message here real quick. Sorry. Sorry, I got a message here real quick there. Either way, these both make sense. You save a lot of money on both of these two deals. You set yourself up a little bit better for 2025. Keeping no dead money on the books for a Jamal thing. You're kind of eating it all here now with that. Both guys weren't going to fit in this split safety, too high shell kind of look. It just wasn't going to really fit to either of them. And with Jamal's case, you probably just didn't want to take the risk on the injury front any more further, and just call it a day for what it is. You gave it a good try of it. You gave it a good run of it. And it makes a lot of sense. The last guy here is Will Dissly to go. This one definitely was one that was a little more less surprising for me, or more surprising for me, because I thought that they would hold on to him. This does take our tight end room down to we got no tight ends right now, so it's a little lean. I don't know if we're just going to run 3 wide receiver sets all the time and maybe a 2-man backfield with Charbonnet and Walker. I'm not mad at that. But it does not appear that we're going to be going probably hard in free agency somewhere, I guess, with a tight end some way, with Dissly going out the board here now. Dissly came in that first year or two, and he started out with a couple of games starting off where he was absolutely majestic. I mean, that first year, we thought we were getting a guy that was what sort of George Kittle's become. You thought you were going to get a game-changing tight end. He was doing it all at that time. I mean, he was catching everything thrown his way. He was blocking like a beast, and he was giving you yak. He was giving you legit yak in those first 2 years, but he had the 2 major lower leg injuries in those back-to-back years, and much like with Jamal, a bit of his health was robbed of him at that time. A little bit of the, what was making him so dynamic there initially. Sometimes the guys don't always come back all the way from the injuries, and it did feel like even with Dissly through the last couple of years, though he's been playing in every single game, it felt like it was always a little bit of an uphill battle getting him there to that spot. So really complete player. He's going to find a home out there in the NFL, maybe not being paid what he was paid before, but somebody will sign him, and maybe even potentially the Hawks look back at him if there isn't as much of a market out there for him to bring him in as that number 2 tight end there for whatever they're going to do, because they certainly have a lot of bodies left to fill. So the Seahawks clear this space. The Dissly one makes sense. As you can see here on the stats over my left shoulder, 17 receptions last year, 172 yards, 1 touchdown, where you're paying a guy up in the upper end of the tight end cost in this day and age. You're expecting that you've got to get that top of the line production. And with Dissly, I would argue a little bit of it goes beyond just his receiving numbers and what he does in the blocking game. But I think the health factor thing here became the final push probably for Schneider and company to say, yeah, let's just move this over though. This isn't a place where we want to take that risk for the production we're getting on it. So Disley was a great soldier here. He was willing to do anything you asked him to do on a given Sunday: pass block, run block, catch. You give him a chance down the field to go up and make a play. He could go up and make a play. And boy, you do wonder with him, if he hadn't sustained those 2 monstrous injuries in the first 2 years, what kind of player he would have been here in his upside and what he would have been able to bring. And that stuff's real. Sometimes we think, again, that this medical science stuff allows you just to bounce back, no problem, easy peasy. But it doesn't always work that way. And sometimes you just don't quite come back. And if you have that back-to-back thing, especially, it seems like, that's just a double dose of difficulty. But props to Disley. Thank you to all of these 3 guys. I don't have any real issues with any of them. I know that some people do with Jamal and some of the behavior that he's shown this last year. But, I think that the guy had a lot of frustrating things he was going through. And this is his passion, his livelihood, his life. And you're watching it go out the door, and people will take their share of shots. I mean, it's probably even me. I'm sure I've taken even from time to time a little bit of unfair stuff at him in that respect. I've tried to be pretty nice with it, but you never know. You're trying. It's a long show. Sometimes you can say some stuff. And so all these guys gave you the best they had to give. They put their bodies on the line. Quandre Diggs with his foot turned sideways. In the last game of a season on a long year, going to make a tackle on a running back. Like I said, one of those guys is, like, I think it was James Conner, one of those guys he's given up, 30 pounds to, and he's trying to get in there and put his nose in there. But they were good for us. You had to make these moves. You had to clear the space. It was just one of those things where there was just no other real way around it on this one, because it wasn't just about clearing space to go for it now. It was about clearing space to set your cap situation up in the right place over the next 2 years. Be it for this offseason to start bringing on the guys you need to bring, and then for next season too, in Jamal's case. And that's tough, but unfortunately where we put ourselves from a cap standpoint of things, you had put yourself up a little bit close to the ceiling, a little bit too far in advance. And you got to start pulling some of that back. You're going to end up in that New Orleans way. You know what I mean? You're going to end up down in that New Orleans way. And we all know what they do, which is go -$70 million every year on the cap. And then they got to do this frantic restructure, release, trade, we'll bonus this, void that, just to get themselves back up under the cap. So it's not an exciting part of talking about the football, the cap situation, and how you got to stay around it. But this is the reality of it. Is for all the fans that like to say the cap doesn't exist, it's not a real thing. Yes, it is. And you've got to make some of these moves based on managing around it. And you can't ever forget, even when you look at our cap situation it is now, it's a combo package that I always used to forget about, that I now keenly kind of remember at the forefront of my mind, which is you need the money allotted for the draft picks, which could be upwards of like $9 million collectively for all your picks. And then you need about another $6 to $7 million in reserve just for your normal business operating expenditures during the season. So that itself, man, that's $15, $16 million. You just have to have off the books before you get to any of your signings, before you get to any of your filling out your roster. Where this does set us now from a cap standpoint here is the Hawks, according to Sports Track, firmly sit 10th post these moves. So they're sitting in pretty nice territory right now, all things being considered, as far as their, I guess I would say, flexibility to make whatever moves they see fit here. If they wanted to go hard, they could. If they wanted to just sit on this money, do the bare minimum, roll the cash into next year, or sit on a lot of the cash up through to the trade deadline this year if they want to make a move, if the team's starting to get cohesive and come together. They can do a variety of different things here, but they've set themselves in a better position state as far as the cap overall with these moves. It's kind of some house cleaning, for lack of a better term, if you want to call it that. And the Hawks now make this a lot more interesting as far as free agency goes Monday, as far as what they might do because of these moves, because now that they have this space. I'm not saying that they're going to go jump haul in on tier one. I'm certainly, they're trying probably feverishly right now to get a deal done with Leonard Williams, but they've got the ability and room now to make a variety of different things happen. And so this makes this a very, very, very interesting day for putting this all together right before free agency, as it is happening now. So interesting to see. Love the moves that we're seeing from them. Makes a lot of sense. You're resetting things in a lot of respects. To reset things, you got to get some things that are out that aren't necessarily going to fit into the new. And you can get why that was the case on this. Let's see what you guys think out there, though, in the chat. Do me a favor, please. Hit the like button if you do like what you're listening to today. I would really, really, really appreciate it. Shout out to the sponsor of the show, Underdog Fantasy. Use my code right now, or click in the bottom of the top of the description section below, and you can get matched up to 100% of your first deposit, up to $100 on me from me through Underdog Fantasy to you, and you support the channel at the same time. But appreciate you guys. Hope everyone's having a good day, and let's see what the chat thinks about these moves here with Jamal. Megan Gok, Roger, my lady from Danenda, thank you for the $20 donation. Very, very, very kind of you, starting us off with a bang here. Says, I'm not surprised by Jamal and Quandre, but devastated about Disley. Any chance we take him back in free agency? I think there certainly is a chance that Big Will Diz comes on back at this point. I wouldn't hold it out of the point of contention at all. You just bring it back on, of course, a lot lower end deal. I don't think that he's going to get paid substantially on the open market. We have seen, Megan, a lot of times players can get a little bit crusty about being released like this in this fashion, where they kind of do the, well, why do you want me back? Why wouldn't you just keep me? Why would you release me if you want me back now? I'm not valuable, but I am valuable. I suck, but I'm also good. Which is it, Seattle? Come on, tell me what, whether that's right or true or real, emotions on this swirl. And that seems to be a part, Megan, that comes into play a little bit one way or the other with this. So I do think that the Hawks could very well come back to Disley and say, okay, here's a 1 year, $4 million deal. We needed to get some space out from under this. We need to clear some room from this, Will. Sorry, but we just had to do it, Uncle Will. But I was also a little bit, this was one that stings me a little bit as well, because I've been definitely a big proponent of Will Disley, and that I really have an appreciation for the inline tight end in this modern age who can do it all. I do a lot of scouting in the draft year in and year out over the last couple of years, and looked very in depth at a lot of these tight ends. And I will tell you, a lot of them don't want to block. A lot of them are too light in the pants to block. A lot of them don't have the technique to block. A lot of them don't have the power to block. It's really not a fun exercise in watching them go about their business at times on the football field. They love to catch. They all love to be those pass catchers, but they don't all love to get in there and get the job done and get it done right. With Will Disley, when it comes to him as a blocker, that's one thing that he brings. And that's one thing that I think, because it's so scarce across the board in the NFL, it does bring so much more value from my standpoint on that, Megan. And so, that was one that I didn't like to see as well. But I also understand as well that, you've gotten some guys here on this roster that, from an injury standpoint and the possibility of that stuff coming up, there's some high probabilities they were probably working off of. I'm sure, especially after probably talking to some of the doctors in regards to that. And that probably has to also affect this stuff too. And I if I was a general manager, it would sway me as well. I don't want to take unneeded medical risks on guys if I'm getting some red flags saying this is not likely to go in the direction of this guy being, at his healthiest moving forward. And so I can understand that. On top of the fact that something had to be done with this cap space. You had to move somewhere and make some money and create some cap from some spot, be wherever it may. But he may come back maybe. So there is some chance. We'll see what the market's going to be for him. The one thing is with this, of course, is the tight end market right now is not very deep, and the draft is not terribly deep with tight ends. So this might drive up a little bit more of the value of the free agent tight ends out there, meaning Will be able to go find himself at least some deal somewhere else, But I'd love to see it, because I do think he'd bring value to this team, especially now in a low-end contract. But Megan, thank you for the $20 donation. Hope everything's going good with your new job, and it's great to see you in the house. Chase Stern, thank you for the $2 donation. Says, let's go. Back-to-back streams. You're a machine. Oh, man, I'm going to go all week here. We got an off-season that's going to be packed, and I think we're going to go tomorrow, too. I've got a show I want to get lined up. We're not going to dive as much into it today, but we will be talking about this specific topic tomorrow, I think, on tomorrow's show with in regards to Jamal and just some lessons learned on this kind of deal. Because if you're going to have the worst trade in the Seahawks history go down, you probably want to make sure that you turn over what were the lessons to be learned from why this deal occurred and why you were drawn to do it, and how can we avoid going into this chasm into the future. Not fall into that trap again. And this isn't a reflection on Jamal per se, it's more of a reflection on the trade itself, assets given up, getting into some of the geekier stuff with it. But I'm excited, man. This offseason's got me hyped for this team right now, Chase, hyped for what they're doing. I think we're making some smart decisions. I think that they're gonna do things where You can see and understand what they're doing in their process and how they're going to try to drive to get us to being a winner again, and that it's going to be very clear, this plan, as we go forward and how this is going to go. Now, it needs to come together, and Mike McDonald still needs to be a great coach, and I'm not advocating for this team to be amazing next year in what they do, but just that they're doing some smart things along this process, I think, including today, and not getting nostalgic on things or saying, well, this guy, has been a good soldier for us, and so we should just keep paying. But hey, this is what's best for the team going forward. Bottom line. End. And full stop. Yeah. But thank you, Chase. I appreciate you for that donation, man. Very kind of you. Nolan, thank you for the $10 donation. Nolan, it's good to see you in the house as well. Says 2024 could be rough. I'm here for it. Jody would probably give more leeway to be terrible-ish for a year to clear the decks versus being middle of the road for 2 or 3 years. Hit the reset button. A lot of great stuff in there. A lot of great stuff in there, Nolan. I think that you definitely have opened yourself up to a potentiality with this deal of, hey, maybe we're not able to bring back in guys who would have given us even the play of a Quandre at safety next year, or tight end Disley and what he gives you next year. And so with that, the potential of the team being a little bit dipped lower if you can't bring those things into play to go. And I'm okay with that potentiality here too. It's one thing your guys will hear me kind of try to hammer over and over again, is that you will... Yes, I'm excited about this team, and it's an excitement in the long term. It's not an excitement with the expectation that next year everything needs to be marvelous, and this team needs to just go out there and cook and look out. We're going to go take this division, absolutely no doubt about it. That'd be great. I think it potentially could happen with the kind of talent you have stacked up over the past couple of years, say nothing of what kind of talent you're going to bring in the board this offseason, but that they're moving into the direction to get us into that state. Becoming elite is very hard. It's very difficult. And I've always said, Nolan, I believe that the team finds itself in 4 different states. Like water has 3 different states, right? I believe that NFL teams in particular find themselves in 4 different particular states. You're either rebuilding, you're ascending, you're stuck in between, or you're elite. You're one of those 4 phases, and you've got to know thyself. Who are you and what are you in your current condition? Are you elite, or are you more middle of the road? Or are you in that reset, rebuild mode? And while we have been thinking like last year, we're on the process of being into ascent, and into ascent means you're knocking on the door to get into elite. When you turn over a coaching staff and do what we've done this offseason, that's more of now, okay, put it more back to the reset point though. That's not realistic to go, no, we're in ascent here with this coach. This new coach we've just brought in who's got to bring in wholly new schemes on both sides of the ball and get them implemented. So that's that part I come back to, Nolan, where like you, I go, that's very smart. That's know thyself. Now that doesn't stop us from finding that rise to occur next year. It's possible. If things come together quickly, if you can maximize the returns of the scheme change, if McDonald can be that guy, he could be that McVay of the defensive side of the ball, then you could get there. But this will be a patient approach to this. It's okay if we're not necessarily going out there and hammering the ball out of the park every week next year. It's about the process being a smart one and the right one to take us into the right direction. And Rome wasn't built in a day. It was not. And there's a lot of work here that needs to be done. Nolan, thank you for the $10 donation. Very kind of you, man, and great thoughts as well. Middle of the road's the worst part. And those 4 states of mind, like Nolan talks about, being middle of the road, that's the worst place you can be. Sometimes we think as fans, the worst place you could be is in that sort of rebuilding, reset mode. It's not a great place to be. It's not a fun place to be, but it's got potential. It's got some hopefulness in it. When you're in between, you're stuck. I've likened it to being in a river stuck in a whirlpool. You're not getting down the river. You're not going up the river. You're just spinning in circles. You're in between. You're in that middle state. Never to rise high, never to sink low. And I think that when this team knowing its state is not, when you make the smarter choice of knowing where you're at each point of the progressional chart, you do a much better job of, I think, then avoiding that in-between phase. Because those in-betweeners, that's that Jerry Jones, we're going to win this year. It's no, this year's the one now. Okay, now last year wasn't the one. This year now is going to be the one. All right? Just even I'm telling you, it's now. Daddy, we got to reset it sometime. I got to reset this, Daddy. Son, I'm 80 years old, okay? I'm 80 years old. I'm not going to die with you in a rebuild mode again, boy. Okay? That's that in-between mindset. Every year Jerry thinks he's got it, but maybe his roster doesn't have that. Maybe that's the time you should be pulling back some things. No. Let's re-sign Dak Prescott to another contract extension on another bad contract. That's the right choice. That's the Texas choice right there. No, not the right choice, Jerry. But bad organizations will continue to do bad things to keep themselves in between. We're not doing that. So no middle of the road here, Nolan. I think we're swinging hard and we're swinging big, and I like the way that they're setting the stage here. Megan, thank you for the $2 donation. I appreciate you for that. It says, heading out to watch the Kraken and set up my Xbox. Ooh, there's a double dose of fun right there, Megan. We'll go out and have some fun with that and get it all set up and get it rolling. And thank you for the $2 donation. Hope you got some cool games set up on the Xbox. I'll be jumping on myself a little bit later. I'll be popping on a little bit more later myself. Millet 06 says expected, but crazy, but expected. Yep. Exactly, Millet. King Bomber, how you doing? He says, D'Eskridge, Monet, Nick Ballore left. You do have indeed a lot more money still that you could theoretically save. Not a lot more money, but a very strong chunk of change. I believe we're up around $5 to $6 million for Brian Monet. Nick Ballore's a couple million. D'Eskridge saves you $1 million off the books. So another $8-9 million in there that you could probably squeeze if you wanted to do that. Either Deck World, what's up, 12? Surprised a little bit that Jamal wasn't a June 1st cut, but maybe that's really like a guy in free agency and you're willing to sacrifice the money saved. I think it's also about two different places that you have your cap situation set up at the current moment. On the books right now, you already had a little bit of space as it was standing right now. So when you released him and you saved cumulatively a little bit of money, you could eat the dead money because your books were in pretty good shape, all things being considered. When you look at next year's cap as it stands, the Hawks coming into today had the 28th most amount of cap space in the NFL for the 2025 season as it currently stands in the books here. So that's that housekeeping to me that was so much part of this move, Ethan, it was about getting that trimmed down and getting yourself elevated into a better place for 2025. And if you made it a post-June 1st designation with Jamal and split that $20 million of dead money up into two different parses, that meant $10 million of that was going on to next year's books, which then meant your relief to next year was not going to be substantial, which would have been brutal if we have a team that's ready at the end of this year to make that Detroit Lion leap into next season. If they found themselves hampered then by a cap catastrophe, that's probably not something that would be that would feel bad. So I think that was a little bit of that there. Ethan, Hawks Nest, yo, Brando, did you see part 2? My boy Denis Villeneuve did it again. He blew me away. Unbelievable how extraordinary Dune Part 2 was. I love Dune Part 1. I think it was one of my favorite movies of the year. I haven't had a chance to go out there and see it in the theaters. I don't know if we've got an IMAX out here in Spoke Compton. I think they all. I don't even know if we have movie theaters out here. I think we just do the drive-bys, still, well, not drive-bys, but the drive-ins. I think they still do that. They like shoot it out onto trees out here on a mountain or something. But I'm going to definitely go see it, Ethan. I'm super stoked, and Denis definitely one of the best guys working right now. I mean, he's extraordinary. So it's good to hear it holds up, though. I'm super psyched. There's not a lot of movies I get to be psyched about anymore, so it's nice to have like something that you're like, yeah, all right, let's go. King says, I like the fact that they took this year, though. I get the fact that money loses value each year, but you have $30 million and you should play the compensatory game. Yeah, I'm okay with it too, King. Compensatory game is a good part to reference on this. If you sign Leonard Williams and Bobby Wagner in-house and, you don't get as active in the first wave of free agency, for instance, and you wait until kind of that third wave point where it doesn't cost the compensatory game, not the worst of ways to go here. I think that they've got the flexibility here. They can sit on the money, they can spend the money, they can roll the money over into next year, they can wait to the trade deadline, they can go hard in free agency if there's some guys that really truly fit. But I don't think that they're going to be driven to have to be forced down one kind of pathway for an off season, which is also the real nice part of it. I'm with you, King. I like it as well. Mark Avacorn, how you doing, man? It's good to see you in the chat. Daniel, hello. Gabriel, what's up? AS, hello. Nick, what is in the house? It sounds like you're liking it too, Nick. That's good to see. But yeah, like Nick says, man, sometimes you just got to rip the Band-Aid off. And I get it with it. It would have been nice to save a little bit of the money for the post-June 1st designation. But with that said, you can understand it. It makes sense. If I guess if 2025 was sitting where we were like more like, well, we've got like the 13th amount most of cap space, you might go, no, we could put a little dead money on 2025 to help out 2024. But new regime, you're at 28, you got to move it back a little bit. Holy hand grenade, yep, we're eating all of Adams' salary. King Bomber, I read an article that talked about how the NFLPA will give Adams $2 million because he was injured when he was cut. Oh, well, that's cool. That's nice of them. I didn't know that they did that. Yeah, Nick, it's not as bad as it could have been. Cap going up certainly helps you here. Burma says good. Free up some money, make some moves. I would expect it to happen now. Nitro, what do you think the top 3 most influential plays in NFL history are? I think a particular Seahawks play that I don't want to say makes it. Yeah, I mean, that one's one that's very hard not to say that would be the Super Bowl play is definitely going to be the one that is going to be one of the 3 plays, I would say. It would be hard not to say that was the case. It just is. There's not another play I think that's really stood out. The top 3, well, if we're not going to just do, recency bias on this and try to look into, truly NFL history, I think the Franco Harris catch against the Raiders, did he catch it? Did he not? Can we get a camera angle to see clearly? That's definitely one of the ones that's very influential, I think. But yeah, you mentioned the other one. Trying to think about what would be the other ones that would stand out to me. I suppose the helmet catch would be a big one. Those would be my best guesses. I'll try to think if there's another one that comes to mind, Nitro. But I think those would be the main ones. Holy Hand Grenade, Brendan did a video and he isn't that cool with it. Well, it's definitely a little bit less money for this year. So I'm sure maybe he's a little bit more would want to keep the door open to the season a little bit more versus what it doesn't close the door down or anything. Just does again that potentiality of the lower floor enters into the play. Arturo says Quandre got released. Doesn't that Facebook? Yes, sir. Yeah, not a good trade. Save the Geese says, fortunately, the Jets didn't win games with those picks from Jamal. Hate their fans so much. They were definitely, they definitely showed you that New York spirit when we made the trade, man. Those were some bitter folks at the time, and they've definitely been happy to, stomp around since then. Mr. Dog, whoa, I heard Adams and Diggs, but not Disley. All 3, man. Clean sweep. Nick says Shaban went down like he did with Adams' career here in Seattle. Could have been amazing. It could have been. The odd thing to me with Jamal and the thing that just really didn't make sense, and I thought that this was one of those things, again, where I'd always anticipated that Carroll was going to turn the thing on this, was just the way and how he was used and the role they put him in. It felt so much more like they were more about trying to put him into their particular box rather than letting him do what he did. And I know they blitzed him highly in that first year. It was overdrive city, but it's like this last year, I think he was at a 5% blitz rate. So they had come down even below what he was doing in his Jets days at this point, which why? No, we don't like to blitz. Yeah. I think so far, Holy Hand Grenade, everybody's feeling pretty good on it. Life says we're going to regret releasing Diggs. It's definitely that potential I talk about, Life, where you were, this next upcoming season, the position of free safety plays below what it would have been played at if Diggs was out there. It's a very, very much a reality of what you're potentially facing here. I think Julian Love can play pretty good back there, but his Love maybe ends up becoming your strong safety. So it may end up being like a rookie back there that we're running, rookie third rounder, second rounder. But yeah, it's very much a possibility here. I think the one thing is with it though, Life, he was on a 1-year deal. So even if he did play here through the year, you were going to probably not likely at 32 years old sign him to a contract extension at that point. King Tay says, Seahawks cleaning house, going to be different next year. Excited for it. I love it, man. We got a lot of optimism in the house tonight. Just what I'd love to see. I think folks are kind of getting it on this, why it was happening. Nick says, we'll find another tight end to love. Indeed we will, Nick. Indeed we will. CMC, see you later, says my orange cat. Got neutered yesterday, poor guy. You got to do with the orange one, with the orange boys, though, especially. Because they're pissers. They will light your house up if you don't. You know what I mean? So you got to do it with the boys. But he'll be mad at you for a day or two, but he'll forgive you. Just get some salmon. Get him some fresh salmon, CMC. He'll be fine. King Tay, Bowers. Let's see. Yeah, this does open the door for Bowers now, doesn't it? Sarah Small, I'd take Diggs on my Colts. Yeah, it would be a pretty good fit there. I do think he's going to find a home, Sarah. I do think he's going to be starting somewhere next year. And what's nice about this is that I think for the first time in his career, he gets to choose where he gets to really go. I don't think he's going to have an unlimited number of destinations, but what I'm saying is he's going to get a chance to go to the scheme that purely rightfully fits what he wants to do. Just don't get pissed at me, folks. If he goes to the Niners, it is possible. Let's prepare ourselves for that. I think they like that kid they got, Jair Brown, out of Penn State, but you never know. Brian Myers says, we got to wait for, is Monet still not healthy, Brian? My God, he is coming back from the long-term recovery plan on that one. Sean Proper, I like the fact that we can take all the hit this season. Clears the slate for 25. That's right, Sean. I'm with it too. A lot of this year is, are we going to be able to implement on both sides of the ball the complicated natures that we're looking to instill versus where we've been prior? We're coming from simplicity and we're going to complexity. Does that happen like a light switch over the course of a training camp? Or does that take a half a season? Does that take 10 games? And then as they start to kind of round into shape, as those 10 games go along, as those 12 games go along, as you're into 14, 15, 16, and you're seeing your team come together, the light bulb come on, them getting it. And then you think, okay, now we go to next year and we got the space to get the stuff done. We got the team that's on board. Everybody's understanding their role and where they need to go. And now we're good to cook. Now we're good to light this candle. Surf Sub says, I think it's smart. Big moves. Let's go Seahawks. Love it. Definitely could bring back Uncle Will, Sean. 100%. Mr. Kane in the house. What's up, man? Brother from another mother in the house. Thanks for reminding me of that. Please do, folks, hit that like button if you could for me. I would really appreciate it. Helps this channel out tremendously. Red Ace, Disley should come back on the vet minimum. I don't know. For his skill set, I think somebody out there would be willing in this analytical age to give him a 1-year, $4 million deal. And I don't know if Seattle's willing to do that. Arturo, Oxnest, I'm sorry. That pumpkin is disappointed with Quandre being released. She is. She can't even look at me right now. She's just looked away. She's like, I can't. I don't know. No. Just no. Just. She's giving me that. She loved Quandre. I think it's because he's so close to her size. Oh, God, that was a low blow. Sorry, Quandre. I had to do it, man. It just came out. Drunk, kind of sucks to see Uncle Will gone, but does that mean we now sign Noah Fant back? It's possible, but I would doubt it. Noah gets to be kind of a little bit of the real bright guy out there as far as an available tight end out there versus a market that's not that deep as it stands. So, I don't know. Well, yeah, Grenade, I'm enjoying Hell Divers at the moment. I'm thinking about getting that, checking that one out, actually. People have been having some fun with it. I'm kind of like, let me see what's up with this. So, I don't know. It's kind of that might want to rope me in. I've been waiting for a game, I'll tell you that. Kronos, not sure of why Eskridge was in Not sure why Eskridge was not in this round of cuts, but I feel like Monet wasn't because he won't pass a physical 2 years later. I think that contract was untenable. Yeah, that contract was horrible at the time, and it's been horrible throughout the part, and it's horrible now. They tried to do that. We're going to get out ahead of this guy and hopefully, get a real team-friendly contract on the kid, but he's just can't stay healthy, and sucks. You're sitting on this, he's a big chunk of change right now and didn't play a lick last year, and now you can't release him still because he can't pass a physical? Like, what's going on? Augustus says, John Schneider said Williams and Brooks are the prioritized free agents. I like one of those. One of those is all right. Brooks might be the guy. Brian says we have safety options on the roster and numerous free agents like Geno Stone. Yeah. I mean, what's Geno going to get on the open market, Certainly not going to get a Quandre Diggs contract, I don't think. And if he's out there for a couple million, maybe they do something like that. Yeah, King, I'm with you. Hopefully Brooks is not the priority. Please no. Please no. And Brian, Jamal was not a post-June 1st designation. The main reason for this is you already had a 2025 cap situation, which was not great. So throwing $10 million of dead money on the books to next year versus just eating it now was a less tenable option. Sam Acosta, it does appear Brian Monet wasn't cut yet because of the fact he can't pass a physical. And I know that there's this whole theory out there from some fans and their outlook of it that the NFL teams at any time can cut any player for anything. But that's not really the way that it works. If they are in a physically altered state, then there's some particulars with the union and the front offices that have to be figured out, and it's not just a free and clear cut at that point. So the team's probably trying to wait for him to get to a healthy enough state that they can then release him. God knows when that's going to be. God. Yeah, Charles D., I don't think Adams was the type of player the coach wants for this defense either. I think most of the people are pretty understanding of this too. Yeah, you got to pass physicals to be cut. That's where, Chris, these players talking about how they could be cut anytime. I'd be cut anytime. Yeah, you got to pass your physical. I.e., if you are cut and you're passing your physical, you're being cut because you're not playing well. More likely than not. Why you mad, bro? Says hopefully Williams takes a discount. I'd like to see that. Mr. Dog, is there a really good tight end coming in the draft? Brock Bowers is a guy that's got a very high potentiality of dropping to the Seattle Seahawks in the draft. And I do consider him one of the 10 blue chip prospect grades I have in this draft. He is one of those guys for me. But it's obviously we're going to have to go through free agency to get a firm reading on this and see where the quarterback carousel runs. And how many QBs will be taken up ahead of us to push a guy like Bowers down. But he's far and away the best tight end in this draft, best tight end in the last couple of drafts that's come out. There's some other guys that are interesting guys in this draft. There's not any other guys I would say that give you any kind of like potential real high-end type of talent like you get with Bowers, though. Surfs up 808s, very confident. He says Seattle will be back even better in the playoffs. Remember that. Good morning, Football Breakdowns agrees with me. Bowers, one of the best tight ends coming out of college. Yes, sir. Cordo says, I sometimes wonder if Jamal is suffering from CTE at the end of last year. I don't know if it's as much that. I think it's, to me, was just more of the frustration. You're moving into a stage, and I know that a lot of times we think that the players are just about the glitz and glamour and they just want to get their money and they want their Instagram and social accounts to look all cool. But these guys love the sport and they love what they do too. And it's the love of that is in their bones. And to think that you're going into the prime of your career, the prime of yourself physically, and that your body just starts to slowly break down on you piece by piece. Your shoulders, your groin, your fingers, ligaments in your leg, concussions. It's one thing after another for a guy like Jamal. And the thing with his fingers, and I noticed it for a year before he really kind of got it to people where they could kind of, when he brought up the fact that he got them fused, I was telling people for a year watching games, I go, folks, watch Jamal Adams when he's playing in these games. And if you go back, I included one of the clips of him doing it in the Jamal Adams video that I did about 2 months ago, Glitched. I've got a clip in it that I show of him doing this. I go, watch Jamal in the games after he makes a tackle and watch it. Go look at his hands. And what you'll see him do with his hands is you're seeing him go down to his hands and pull his fingers back out from being dislocated after play after play after play. Again, go watch that video. There's a cut in there against the Colts where he did it in week one of an NFL season against the Colts. After tackle, you see him yanking his fingers back out. And he talked about that after he got them fused. That's why he got the fingers fused. But how that's got to weigh in on a psyche of a guy, and over a year's span that happens, I can only wonder. And I think that's where you got to give a guy like that understanding all that's at play. You know, you're watching a guy and what he does for a living and what is his passion, what he loves, come thundering down to the ground and fast. And we all want them to deal with this with grace and acumen and just handle it and shrug it off their shoulders. But there's emotionality involved here. And you can't ask for it both ways, where you want the emotionality, but then you ride them for when they're emotional. And that's part of why I never really made too much about that stuff and what he did. But I don't think it's CTA. I think it's just that frustration that mounts. One can only wonder going through something like that. Nick Guzman says, Jaden Hicks, come on down. Where's Snail at? He's got to be happy somewhere. William Leonard. I'm a little bit behind on my dono. Sorry about this. Randall McDaniel. Sorry, first let me get this one. Thank you for the $2 donation. It says, Pete Carroll still calling shots. All three of these moves made. Well, thank you for the donation, Randall. If Pete Carroll was still here right now, Quandre Diggs would not be gone. No, I don't think any of these three moves Coach Carroll would have been on board with having seen happened. I think the Jamal thing is one of the reasons they got to the place of, we're going to call it a day, Pete, because we do know a little bit about the fact that this was a potential, I think, of Pete sitting down and having the talk with the ownership where he could convince them on riding this ship for next year, but it had to be him doing specific things and being willing to do specific things to get to that place with him here. And I think that just the fact that they probably got to the immediate first part off the gate of Jamal, and ownership was like, okay, so Jamal's got to go. And Pete's like, no, we can make this work. I can make this work. And then I'm guessing Pete probably fought like crazy at that point to say we should still retain in Jamal, and that in itself, from an ownership's perspective, becomes this is an example why we're at a place of an impasse, and we've got to go to a different direction of this. But I don't think Randall, any of the three moves would have been made. I think Pete would have pounded the table for all three guys to stay. And at least in the case of Diggs and Disley, they would have remained. But part of that too is, of course, Randall, that you're not running you wouldn't be running, of course, the new defense you're running, which is a little bit of what's pushing this too, is the difference in schemes of what you're looking to run. At least in the case of Diggs and Adams, I believe. But thank you, Randall. It's good to see you in the house, brother. William Leonard has been a member of the Hawks Nest for almost 2 years, 22 long months. Thank you for that, William. Hawks Nest for life. What's up? Any predictions where Russ might end up? Go Hawks. I've got a strong belief with Russ. I got a strong belief and feeling. As Christopher Walken said, Chris, who's he going to get? I say, I'm going to tell you, Brandon, I know where he's going. He's going where my uncle's from. Pittsburgh Steelers. Great team. Just need a quarterback that isn't non-functional And he's that at this point, whatever that's worth. But I do believe Russell Wilson is going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. So why not? KJ Wright's going to be a coach of the Niners. Why shouldn't Russ go be a Pittsburgh Steeler? That's my belief, though, at this point. Sounds like in this late hour, we're hearing a lot of heavy rumors that Kirk Cousins is going to be going to the Atlanta Falcons, and that they are, that's a weird one to me. But they are circling around that one supposedly. And I've long thought Russ would either be going to Atlanta or to Pittsburgh here with everything all considered. And the Raiders sort of being that backup team for him, that real backup team. But Steelers, William, for sure, man. And Hawks Nest for life, brother. Garth Knight, thank you for the $5 donation. Great to see you in the house too as well, brother. This is if Russell Wilson, number 3, gets a gig, he might pound the table for Disley. Very well could. And I will say if he goes to Pittsburgh, I think, Garth, it's going to be a little bit harder to make that case. They've got Pat Freiermuth as their main starter there. And then, of course, behind Freiermuth, they've got that gargantuan big dog out of Georgia last year, Darnell Washington, 6'7", 290 gajillion pounds with 37-inch long arms. So they kind of already have their 2 tight ends. Would Disley, Garth want to go in there and slide in as a 3rd tight end? Hell, they've even got Connor Hayward there. Cam Hayward's brothers there is their 3rd tight end. So they're sitting 3 tight ends deep, to where, Garth, I don't think, even if Russell made the case, I don't think that they would have the opening for it. I do also think, Garth, Russ is in much a different place from a cachet spot as far as what he can and cannot, or what he will and will not request from any teams of wherever he's going. I think there's a little bit of excuse me. I think that there's a little bit of trying to reputational cleanup thing going on aisle 4 here with Russ. And that is that, you're known for coming into Denver and you're saying, okay, give me my office and I like this, someone did this. I think there's going to be more of just, you need to come in, put your head down and just be the QB in here if you are. So that's less of you making a push with this guy or that guy at that point. I would think, Garth, But if it's Pittsburgh, there's no room on all 3 of those guys are going to remain on the roster going through into next year. So he won't be able to bring him on there. But if it's somewhere else like the Raiders, then that would be possible at that point. Noah Lansing, thank you for the $5 donation, Noah. Very kind of you. Excited in the upside of this team. What's your take on Jarek Reed now, and who do you think will do well with McDonald? Who has the highest upside? Well, I think that I liked a lot of what I saw from Jarek Reed last year during the preseason period, Noah. I thought he was quick and fast. It's the thing that stood out to me, in that I didn't have a lot of tape to look at him with New Mexico State. Just there's not a lot of available tape I have access to find on Jarek and see what he did and how he did it. But the highlights that you got from him, you could feel how he had some twitchiness to him. And he's not the biggest guy, but he's willing to get in there and be physical and a lot of this at times, and being a tackler and being just being willing to get in there. Stick your nose in there and let it happen. Don't come up there and you're sort of patty caking or looking to sort of side hug someone. Get down in there and drive. Get your legs up underneath you. Get your technique underneath you and put it home. Maybe you don't make the tackle, maybe you do, but you're going to have a lot more likelihood if you actually commit to the whole process, which a lot of these players don't. So Jarek was very impressive in preseason. He stood out in a couple games, Noah, with that skill set. This carried over into the year last year, where I think he was second in the NFL in special teams tackles when he went down with the torn ACL. But he has had the torn ACL. It did come around midseason of last year. And so a little bit in answering your question, there becomes a bit of a question in my mind of where is Jarek Reed at in his recovery? Is he going to be, as we've seen with this ACL, some guys come back like it's nothing and they're back the next year and they're bouncing around and it's no problem. Other guys take 2 years. Other guys don't ever really fully recover. He needs his speed and quickness because he doesn't have the prerequisite necessarily size of your modern, he's not really small, but he's a little bit undersized. So he needs that speed and quickness to make it happen. Is he a fit for our new defense? I don't know if he's as much in the mold of a split safety type guy to where you would be looking at this guy saying, I can trust him to put him down there for 200, 250, 300 snaps a year as a box safety at times. That's where he might not be as much of a fit to this defense on that. I like his upside still, though, Noah. I like him as a player, and if he can come back to full strength, I think he was on that kind of rise last year to a guy that would be able to come back in year two and compete out there with whoever else you have out there at free safety. And with, I think, a little bit of what will be a draw here to pull and move Julian Love to more of a strong safety kind of role. I think Julian Love's going to be kind of playing more of your Hamilton role next year in this defense. Then that does open up that door much more, Noah, to Jarek Reed having the starting opportunity, because as it stands right now, it's Jarek and Kobe Bryant that would be basically your two competing guys, and Kobe's been strong safety in how he's been lined up more often than not. So even that's kind of like, he'd have the job right now if it was tomorrow. If we had a game tomorrow, he'd be your starting, if he could walk with the injury, he'd be your starting free safety. But so I like him. Who has the highest upside on this defense? Devin Witherspoon has Hall of Fame upside. Nobody comes into the realm of that. I believe that Julian Love is the player that most benefits from Noah. Of any of the players on the roster, he's the one that's going to benefit more, I think, than anybody else, because he's played in this defense before with Wink Martindale and the Giants, and Martindale used him all over the place, and he was excellent in that role. So I think that's going to fit very, very, very nicely with McDonald and this defense, at least initially, at least next year. Long term, we'll see how else it shakes out, but next year for sure. Thank you, though, Noah. Appreciate you. Concierge with Nolan. Thank you for Nolan for another $5 donation, brother. Pretty, very, very kind of you. It says, Brian Monet showing up hurt to his physical like Beavis grabbing his liver or Tommy Boy. It doesn't hurt here so much as here. Yeah, right here. It's a great scene, yeah. Do I got a bruise on my face? No. It looks fine. Doesn't hurt so much here. Much as right here. He's got the huge bruise on his face. If you haven't seen Tommy Boy, kids, go see Tommy Boy. It's a great film. Still holds up. Hilarious. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he did one of those moves that, soldiers used to do back in the day to avoid the draft, Nolan. Maybe he's in the woodshed there with a cousin or something. He's like, okay, just stab into the meat of my thigh, okay? Just right into the meat. Don't go too deep to the bone. I just need you just right into the thigh meat. I'm going to say I pulled it. I don't know if they're going to buy that, bro. Just thigh meat me, man. Okay? Thigh meat me. No, use the smaller knife. That's too big. Smaller knife. Yeah. Okay. Give me the piece of wood I can bite down. No, they can't cut me if I do this. I'll say I sustained it on the field. But something like that happened, Nolan. I don't know how the guy still... wasn't the ACL 2 years ago? Something like that? It's been a while. That's all I'm saying. David Yang, I wanted Diggs and Jamal Adams gone before this decision, so this was a good decision. I was indifferent on Disley, but I understand as to why to unload Disley. Yeah, I think this makes sense from most people's standpoint, David, and Disley, while a little surprising, again, understandable. You can maybe be upset with the move or anger, but you can understand the move too. It does make sense. Jordan Clark, my fiance says I can get married in a Seahawks jersey. Who should I wear? Oh my goodness. Well, for me, it's a Largent. That'd be the one I'd be getting married in. Yeah, I can't believe she signed off on it. That's a good woman right there. I think you got to keep her. I don't need to know anything else about her. She's a keeper. Michael Cam likes Williams, Braden Fisk, Quandre Sweat. Sign me up for that, Michael Cam. Sign me up for that. James Williams too. Hell yeah. Calm Cow, I think we got another $5 million from Gino's bonus restructure thing that Sports Track hasn't counted yet. Let me see. I think Yeah, you might be right on that. I think you're right. You think you're probably right on that. I think they still got the base salary basically rocking the same as it was. So that's a good point. More money to be coming. Ryan White says drive-bys in Spokane makes sense. He's dripping the drive-by movie. They got a projector hanging out the window. Exactly. That's the Spokane way out here. I'm telling you. God, get an IMAX, people. Get an IMAX. What year is it? Bills wide right, King. I was thinking about that as one of the plays that might stand out. But that was all. It's hard to go to just a missed kick, you know? It was kind of a shorter 40-yard kick, but why you mad, bro? Says I think Diggs is going to go to the Eagles and Jamal to the Cowboys. Well, it's possible. Why you mad, bro? But that's a little bit the same thing. I wonder a bit with going to the Eagles that I would with coming here to Seattle is that Vic Fangio is going to take over the Eagles now. They're going to run the cover 2 shell safety stuff, which again comes back to, does Diggs want to do strong safety stuff at this time in his career? You're going to have to play some of those snaps legitimately. You know. Somebody was asking about Joe Milton to Seattle. It's possible, but you got to take him in the lower rounds if you're going to. He seems to be getting a lot of love from people because of the combine experience, but I would highly recommend people go out and go rewatch his combine, or not his combine, but go watch the Tennessee tape. You know, just turn on the tape. You can go type in Tennessee offense YouTube and watch 2, 3, 4, 5 Joe Milton games, and you're going to come away understanding that the guy's accuracy is waning, and the decision making is in a real poor state for a lot of the time. And it's what's really tough with the poor decision making thing is that he's not in an offense with a high degree of difficulty. He's in an offense that's very simplified in its nature. It's very set up for you to be accurate, to have simple, easy kind of throws set up for you to just find those easy completions. And yet he still oftentimes just couldn't quite, just never, you watch him, you just don't feel like he's ever got the right feel on the play of what's going on or where to be looking. His eyes are always kind of going the wrong direction, it feels like. Flash, if Bowers falls to 16, it'd be a hell of a day. That'd be a wonderful start, Flash, to an NFL draft, wouldn't it? I might do a handstand on live stream. I might commit to that. Yeah, Philip Milton's got to be a late pick. He's got to be a day 3 guy. 5th round would, to me, be kind of the ideal. I can maybe be talked into 4th round, but even that, I'm like, eh. He's got a long way to go. He's got a lot to clean up. Mike B, do you think Reed or Bryant will be able to fill the role? Or in the draft. I think Mike B, it's probably going to be likely that it's neither of those two guys that ends up your starter at free safety. You're probably going to either go out and get a Geno Stone type on a low-end contract in free agency, or draft a guy like Kitchens out of Miami, you know, something like that. But I don't think either of those guys end up in that spot if I was to be a betting man. Kelly in the house. What's up, Kelly? Says, hey guys, sad to see Quandre go, but seems he's taking it well. We haven't heard of anything from Jamal yet on Twitter that I know of. We'll miss him. It's tough in all accounts, Kelly. Moves make sense, but you also do go, boy, they were good soldiers, good warriors out there on the field. Jag Sports Talk with Jose says, please hit the like button. Thank you, Jose, for reminding me that. Please do hit that like button, folks, for me if you could. You mad, bro? I heard we're taking the full cap hits for Jamal Adams this year. Why not wait till post June 1st to spread it out? Because your 2025 cap situation was in kind of perilous shape coming into the day. You mad, bro? It wasn't necessarily that you're in like, we've got to make some horrific decisions next year to get our cap under the line, but you were 28th in your cap situation sitting next year. So to go earmark essentially $10 million of dead money onto the books for next year with where the cap was at was probably not going to be a smart way of going about it. And so they want to take the hit this year fully. They had a little more space this year, a little more breathing room to work with this year. And it also sets you up better for next year if they want to fully engage elite, engage contention. Now you can do so if you're going to want to go and make a couple of moves that are a little more splashy. Haron Sports says thoughts on Junior Colson. Junior Colson, it's awesome that you bring that up. I was back last night, going back, and as I like to say, I'm never really a one kind of film watch guy with these guys. I tend to like to go back a couple of different times and just kind of keep, rewatching different guys, go back on tape, rewatch, especially once you have it to kind of measure up against other linebackers in the draft. Junior Colson was born to be a middle linebacker. Everything just kind of feels like it comes really naturally to him, with the exception of maybe he's not as much the high-end blitzer guy. He can do that. He can do it at a functional level, but he's not as dynamic as, even guys we have maybe on the roster right now, like a Jordan Brooks or a Bobby Wagner. But whatever other duty you ascribe him to do, he'll be comfortable in that role. I think he is the best defender, the purely best defender in this draft at diagnosing post-snap where the ball is going and who the ball carrier is going to be. No defensive tackle, no safety, no other linebacker, no corner. Does as good a job as recognizing where that goes. And for a middle linebacker that's got to be on the seek and the hunt at all times, that's a great trait to have. A lot of middle linebackers have had their careers kind of upended by the lack of instincts or feel for where to go in particular plays like that, like he does. And it stands out snap after snap after snap. In coverage, zone drops, he moves to the right space. He oftentimes will take away the first read if it's going to be a shorter route that they're looking to attack with. On the deeper stuff, he's got a tremendous amount of bounce and lateral movement to where he can go off the snap and be in the A gap, and then he can drop 25 yards down in space and be out there in coverage legitimately deep down the field and do his job. Picture perfect tackling form, excellent lateral bounce. He's got a way of dipping around second level blockers that's really, really, really nice, though there are times where he can get a little bit caught, but he's still then strong enough to where even if he gets caught and blocked, he doesn't get sent on the train lines down the tracks. He's able to then still root down, take the guys on and hang in there and still, find his way to still do the ball carrier potentially. So even when he's kind of losing, he's still finding a way to kind of recover on the play. Michigan loved this guy so much that even when you would go to four wides, you'd expect the defense to counter back with dime or four cornerbacks, one linebacker. But instead, Michigan would oftentimes stay in nickel in those four wides, and he would be that defender out there on that wide receiver, that fourth receiver, because the team felt like they could trust him in those times, and they could. He held up in those moments. He has emerged, and especially after last night's tape, I'm sold on this point as where I stand with it. He has emerged to me as the best middle linebacker in this draft. Not by far ahead of Cooper. Cooper is neck and neck with him, but he gives me everything we need. He's got familiarity with this defense. I think he seems like everything I read about him, a leader of men down there. He's played a lot of football in Michigan. They got him on the field very quickly there, recognizing what he brought to the table. He's excellent. I would love to get him. I do have him as a second round guy, Haron Sports, but he'd be a hell of a get. My player comp for him is C.J. Mosley. I think he's very, very much similar to Mosley. And like Mosley, who's not necessarily looked at as one of the best middle linebackers at any one given time in the sport, still a guy that'll end up stacking up over his career 4, 5, 6 Pro Bowls, maybe an All-Pro, still have a very fine type of career. You mad, bro? Bauer at 16? That's my kind of dream scenario. I've been a big guy in trading back, you mad, bro, but if Brock Bowers is the guy that's going to be there at that spot, I got to jump. Nick Guzman, what about Isaiah Simmons coming in to play safety? He's actually one guy with a similar athletic abilities as Hamilton. It's possible that they look to target him, Nick. You did get a little bit of already a look-see into what he could do in this defense with how Wink Martindale tried to use him within the defense this past year with the Giants. One thing is that he's not going to cost a lot of money. And so if you want to take a flyer on him to try him out in that kind of role, you could. I don't really see him as a free safety, of course, but could he be maybe a strong safety? Maybe. I will say, Nick, he's not really played into that role throughout the course of his career. He's always been a guy up around in the box, coming off the edge, middle linebacker, maybe even sometimes you'll use him as a slot, but he's not really ever played as the free safety. Holy on Grenade says Helldivers, PS5 exclusive, and I think only Steam only be. Xbox ain't got it yet. Well, I got Steam, so I can always do it on Steam. Holy on Grenade, just plug the controller into the, computer. So I might do it that way. We need a new game. We're waiting for the gaming industry right now is just completely in piss shape. Philip Castle, did the Hawks take a shot at Sam Hartman late in the draft? I can't think so. I'm not sure that Hartman's going to even be picked in this draft, to be honest with you. I've got him marked as a UDFA guy. He's not mobile. He's not accurate. And he doesn't have any significant arm strength to speak of, not even a league average arm. So you're kind of going, what are we drafting here? And he's really old. He's the oldest quarterback, oldest player in this draft, maybe 26 years old. So, yeah. Mofo, I don't know if you answered, but can you imagine offensive sets with Bowers and Bobo at tight end? It's possible. You don't have a lot. There's not a lot of experience that I've seen here in the NFL history recently of wide receivers being kicked into tight end. So that's the part where when I'm asked about this and Bobo or other players being moved into tight end, some people are like, well, how about DK getting some tight end snaps? I'm open to it completely, Mofo, but I will say that if we're just talking about what I see on the NFL level and how many other teams do utilize in that way or go that route with it, I don't see too many who do. So I don't think you're likely to see it happen, but certainly with the way that Bobo blocks and his size, you would think that maybe that would be a natural way that you could use him to get him snaps in there, especially with how thin the tight end position is currently. King Bomber says, Hope Schneider wants to play the comp game this year, save the money for next year, get some bargain contracts up, and replicate what teams like the Ravens, 49ers, and Rams do year in and year out. I'd be completely okay with the 2 King if they wanted to play the compensatory game. And let's say they do re-sign Leonard Williams. We'll see on Bobby. But then you let Noah Fant walk. You let, let's see, how would you do that? You'd got Mike Jackson's out there. I think they got to put the tag on him. Phil Haynes, Evan Brown, Damian Lewis, DJ Dallas, Drew Lock. And there's a little assemblage of guys that collectively they all go out there and sign, and you don't reverse the other side of that. You can come out on the right end of that compensatory side for sure. Guys, if we sign Williams, we won't get compensatory picks, probably. Well, Williams doesn't count in the compensatory game, Nagasa, because he is your own free agent. So the offshoot of compensatory is how many outside free agents you sign, not how many interior free agents you sign. So that's one of the upsides to signing a guy like Williams and Bobby. Like if you're going to plan on going again to middle linebacker on the open market anyway, and he gives you a skill set close to Bobby, well, you just grab Bobby because Bobby doesn't affect that compensatory flip. James Watson, Jamal was tough. Shame on some Seahawks fans talking crap at him. Yeah, there was a lot of people. There were some people that were pretty hard on him, James. Nick says the way they talk about Locke, I wouldn't be surprised to see a 2-year deal. Possible. I think it gets harder, Nick, when you're paying Gino where you're paying him at versus what his cost was last year. Because Locke will make pretty good money on that at that point. I mean, I'm not talking about expensive, but it's not cheap. Land Grenade says Steelers said they don't want Russ. Ooh, well, like Raiders it is. Save the Keys. Pete was so stubborn trying to hold on to the good old days. He vetoed the Russ trade in 2018. They should have sold high on players like Earl and Sherm. Build the trenches. That's hopefully the lessons we now learn on this type of stuff, you know. And yeah, we held on to the old for a little too long. Steve says, BS, Jamal would have been gone regardless if Carroll was still coach or not. He's totally beat up. Well, I certainly am definitely making some guesses about what happened in that conversation between Pete and ownership. And maybe someday we'll know or learn on this, Steve. I do know that Pete talked about Jamal prior to that meeting, and his expectation was that they were going to be able to get Jamal back, that he was just struggling to get back this year. But the full intention by everything Pete told us, Steve, was that he wanted Jamal back. There was no indication of maybe he ain't going to have it. Maybe Jamal never get back fully. Maybe this is just it. It was just hey, he tried like a warrior to come back as quick as he could. He just couldn't come back this fast. He just needs a little bit of time. So I think it's a pretty good educated guess. I don't know if it may be BS, but I think it's a pretty good educated guess. Brian says, hot take, reunited with Canales at Carolina to back up and beat out Bryce. Oh, I think he could beat out Bryce Young. So there may be something to that, Brian. I like it, man. That's outside the box, but 2 and 2 could come together on that. I still think right now Russ is a better version of a quarterback than Bryce Young is. Tom Eden says Kirk Cousins' wife is from Alpharetta, Georgia. Alpharetta, Georgia. I'm from Alpharetta, Georgia, Kirk Cousins. Oh, you throw the coal. You throw the football. Just outside of Atlanta. So we got some local connections. There we go. Flashes, they've invested way too much into Bryce to pull that card. Could be. Very possible, Flash. Russ might end up in a weird state at that point. Sam Dog, the infamous 253, says at least Adams is finally gone. Finally on the dough. Nick Guzman, I think Russ goes to New England. They can trade down from number 3 and get a haul. That team, as many picks as they possibly get. Russ can hold them over for a year. Another top 3 pick inbound. That makes sense. They certainly feel like as a roster, they've got a ways to go, Nick, that they're not close. And so going and getting a quarterback at this stage of things may not be the right way of doing it. So I could see that being a bit of their process. Jam says, to Atlanta, Denver didn't play Russell Wilson ball. Too structured a system kills Russ. Just saying. I agree with you on that. Tom, I wouldn't be surprised that Russ goes to a team who has a lot of talent. Maybe the Commanders decide to go after him, but I think it's the Raiders or Falcons. Definitely would be if the Steelers are off the board, my next 2 teams would be Raiders or Falcons. Alex says the Broncos are being stupid to cut Russ. I don't know. I think it's definitely, the stupidity was probably giving him a contract before he'd even played it down with the team. That was probably the first point of really stupidity for the Broncos. I don't know if this is the stupidity point. Once you go out and you get a guy like Sean Payton, who's an offensive-minded coach and whose offensive system relies upon structure and timing, you removed Russell Wilson as a fit the moment you made that move. You know, was Sean Payton not the right coach? Well, maybe not. Maybe. But you know, is it smart to go get a coach simply for the aging quarterback, no matter what you paid him, to get the most out of them? It's again those eternal argument debate things, I suppose. But I don't know if there's stupidity there, Alex, in doing it now. I think the stupidity is in paying him. With Sean Payton, it was just not going to be a fit between those 2 camps. Sean Payton wants to show you how brilliant he is. He wants to show you the play structure and how he set this up with these flood zone concepts, and he set this up with his sequencing, and having a quarterback playing improvisationally off time sort of takes away the credit that you get, even if it is successful within that. You know, just 2 counter ideologies at play, I think. Nick says apparently the Falcons want Cousins. If that's the case, I see Pittsburgh trading for Fields and New England signing Russ. I could see it go that way for sure, man. Nick, definitely could see it going that way. I wouldn't have connected Russ as much to New England, but you know. Steve says Seahawks wouldn't hire KJ Wright as an assistant linebacker coach, so he went to the Niners. What the F? That one was a wild one for me to see too, man. I don't know what to make of that. Dio says, who do you think will pick up Russ, or is he washed? I don't think Russ is washed. I think he's a very specific type of quarterback that's got to be used in a very specific type of way. He's going to need a roster that's going to be built up around him. He's going to not going to carry the day for you necessarily. But that's not to say that that's just me completely saying he's washed with it. It's just you have to be very specific in your understanding of Russ and how to utilize him. The Broncos failing on Russ was the lack of their imagination and understanding of how to utilize Russ and what to build around Russ, in my opinion. So I look at them and I know that they got the pass protection up this year quite a bit. Some of that I wonder is a little bit of some of the structure of the plays they would have where Russ would be taking a snap. 2 seconds after taking the snap, he's throwing a flat route. You know, all of the offensive linemen in that situation get a win from PFF as far as getting their win on the block, but not really is that really good pass protection at that point. And admittedly, I didn't go back and watch a ton of Bronco games to kind of find a way to make the assessment on this. But I think if you give him, and this is why I've thought the Steelers would be the best spot. You get Arthur Smith as a really good offensive mind there, a guy that's going to be committed to running the football and running it from a creative fashion. You got two backs there that can really make that running game work for Arthur Smith. You've got a guy in George Pickens who can go up and get the ball and high point stuff and work with Russell's deep ball really well. Deontay Washington, who's got your burner type, get over the top. Again, works really well with Russell Wilson. And then you just do a lot of structured stuff with Wilson that's not about hitting it on time. It's structured in the way of how you're setting it up, where it's like, okay, Russ, you're going to roll out here on this. You've got two reads. If the two reads aren't there, then run the ball and try to get us 5, 6, 7 yards on the play. You know, or you're going to get back here into shotgun, you know, make your one read. And if you don't see that, then scramble out the back door of the pocket like you do. And we'll anticipate that with the secondary routes will break off. It's a different type of structure. So you got to commit to that. And if they do so, you can find success, I think, still with Russell. I don't know if he can take you to the ultimate Super Bowl against these quarterbacks in the playoffs, but you can find success with it and he can make some noise. But you've got to buy into him and what he is as a player fully and what he can't do fully. And that's when I think the thing that's been a little bit missing there with the Broncos. So, Parkaholic, how you doing, man? Garth Knight, thank you for the $5 donation. Appreciate you. He says, I dare you to do a mock sometime in this stream while feeling free to make one trade at any time. All right, we'll do a mock at some point here. I'm down, Garth. I'm not anti-mock. I'm always with the mock action. We can do it. Jiven says, what do you think about Thaddeus Moss? Jiven, that be Randy Moss's son, the former tight end. I don't think he's in the league right now. But Garth, yeah, give me a sec. We'll pop a mock. I'll pop a mock on the spot. Thank you for the $5, man. Akshay says Tyler will also get released post-June. He may, Akshay. I think the thing to consider with this a little bit is that this is going to happen with Tyler. Not have to happen, but I would be very surprised if it was going to happen, that it would have to happen within the next basically 4 or 5 days if you're going to do that with Tyler. The reason being is that if you go to a player and you're a month into free agency and a guy like Tyler and you're like, okay, Tyler, you know, we've gone through free agency and yeah, we're going to post-June 1st you. You're not releasing a guy like Tyler, who's been such a good player for you, who's been a leader on this team, a guy that's done right by you at every turn. You're going to kind of screw him a little bit because there's now not going to be as many teams out there with money to give Tyler or him to get a contract. And a lot of times that kind of move on a player can put them, on the downward trajectory to being out of the NFL. And I would say that when it comes to John Schneider and his modus operandi, it is not to act that way with players. So you may be right, but it would have to happen within essentially the next 4 or 5 days for that to be the case, I would think. I don't believe that they would do it once free agency has gotten in a week, even a week into free agency. A lot of the money is already then getting spent up. Brando2345 says, what's your thoughts on Jerome Baker? He's getting released. I got to be honest. I don't know a ton about Jerome, and don't think I scouted him a lot. 3rd round selection coming out of Ohio State. I don't remember scouting him back in 2018 draft. 6'2", 4'5'3". Kind of about middle of the road in his grade. Maybe not the best in run defense, but good in coverage as a middle linebacker. So it looks like a guy that can run and get in coverage really well and moves in space really well, but maybe not as good against the ground run game. I don't know if I'd be on board with that, Brando. Kind of depends on, I guess, what the cost would be if we're talking on that. But certainly, too, with the Dolphins, they're not just releasing him, Brando, because he's bad at this point. The Dolphins are in a cap situation where I think they've got to clear some space out. They've got some things they're trying to get done, and they're in a really, really tough cap standpoint of their situation at the moment. I think I was looking at them and I was thinking that they had low-key one of the worst cap situations from a cap flexibility standpoint of any team out there. But I don't know a ton about Baker. I'm sorry. I didn't get a chance when he came out to scout him much, and just never have seen him much jumping out to me as a player. You mad, bro? I seen some mocks had us taking JJ at 16 after watching the quarterback throw at the combine. I'd rather take Penix. I would too if I've got to be driven to take one or the other. I would take Penix all day long, and I don't want to take Penix even in the first round. But this JJ McCarthy discussion of getting into the first round was, it's bananas to me. It's just bananas. Swedish is, I'm all for the Raider Russ and his villain arc. That would complete the villain arc. Zorn76 is great news. Adams is the worst trade the Schneid ever did. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. This is not just the worst one I think Schneider ever did. I was thinking about it again in retrospect, and Schneider's done some great trades. He might have the 3 worst trades sitting on the books in Seahawks history when it's all said and done. Unfortunately, that's probably part of what happens when you're in a place for 14 straight years. But we were definitely on the worst side of this trade by a far amount, and not a lot of, really, when you look through the Hawk history, you go through any of the eras, 80s, 90s, 2000s, really not a lot of areas of time where you have bad trades, past like giving an extra first to move up in the draft and get this like Kelly Stauffer or something. So you don't have a large track record of this, but that one's the worst one. I'm all for Russ too, Swedish. I like he needs a mustache if he goes to the Raiders. It's true. He's got to do the mustache with the twisted turns on the end of it. If Russ goes to could you imagine that? Rocking the Raiders jersey with the Raleigh fingers mustache, the little twisted ends up on either side. And after every touchdown, he twists the mustache. That's his new celebratory move. As he twirls the mustache. I'd be cool with it. Gar says he'd be like Hollywood Russ would be like Hollywood Hogan. Just turning heel. Zorn76, Russell Wilson's nothing more than an above average quarterback at best at this point in his career. I think that's very accurate. Very accurate. Ringo, Russ on the Patriots would be a hit. They should go for it. They don't want to rebuild and lose for 3 years looking for a rookie. I'm okay with it. It's an okay landing spot for Russ. And they're a bit of an unknown with the new coach they got in there and whatnot. Brian, he says, that's why I lost respect for Sean Payton. When signing Russ wasn't your decision, you go to war with the army you have, not the army you want. And Payton wasn't willing to tweak his system to do it. Yeah, I don't think that the situation and how he's managed Russell Wilson, to your point, Brian, has reflected well on Sean Payton and his outlook and what people will view of him historically. And we'll see what he does moving forward beyond this. But you walk in as Sean Payton to the Denver Broncos situation, and I think you had to at that time kind of sign up for the fact that I've got to make the most out of this Russ thing. And I've long said, this is a bit of confirmation bias I'll totally own. My given instinct for this whole thing when Sean Payton walked in was that he was not signed up to Russ. He knew Russ was not going to be a fit for his offense, And so then it turned into a game of theatrics a little bit to sell the going public on why then the move will have to happen a year after I arrive here. It's played out this way. As I said, it may be just my own personal confirmation bias that makes me think that that's how this went. But his actions do support that. Screaming at Russ on the sidelines and going bonkers, stop kissing so many effing babies. There was definitely a little bit of this sort of tough love approach he was coming in to apply, which just didn't ever really make a lot of sense for a guy that you're hoping was to be a leader of your team and, a guy that you had a lot of money on the books that you were going to have to spend for. But he found his way out of it after a year. I don't think he did as much into last year into maximizing Russ to the utmost. I think it was a lot of trying to take some of what Russ did and pair it to what I want to do. And my stuff doesn't really fit to what Russ does. And I don't like that. That makes me mad. But you knew that when you took on the job. That's that disingenuous part of it, Brian. But that money was real for that Walmart money, man. That Walmart money will make you do some funny things. Steve says, we play the Pats in New England next season. Would love to beat up on Russ some more. Millet says, who else do you think is getting cut? And who do you think is getting restructured? I do believe that Brian Monet will eventually be cut. I believe that Dwayne Eskridge will eventually be cut. Maybe Nick Bellore too as well. Those would be the three candidates remaining, I think. The first two I feel stronger about. I'm not sure with Bellore. He's a bit of an oddity, and the savings aren't insanely substantial with Bellore for cutting him. Restructure-wise, I think the only guy that's really potentially restructured, because you've kind of cleaned your house up, you've cleaned up your backyard, you got everything in the trash bags, the yard's been trimmed, all of the weeds have been pulled. There's really only the conversion of Tyler Lockett's base to bonus that would be the other restructure I would expect them to make at some point if they needed to do so. But I don't know that they would only do that, Millet, unless they're pressed up against the cap. They've spent their money and they have some other move they want to go make, or they need to create the move because they don't have any other money left for reserve funds. So I think that they're not going to look to do that on Tyler's deal, that they would like to just let that deal roll as it is. But that would be the only other one that could possibly go down. I dig the Hawks. Hey, Brandon. Hey, 12s. Wish Disley being cut. Will Hawks make an offer to re-sign Colby Parkinson? I don't think so. Some of this depends upon what Parkinson's going to get on the open market. Addicted to Hawks. Sports Track right now has him down for getting over $6 million per year. And if that's the case, it's sort of, why not just sit on Disley at that point? If it sort of defeats the purpose of cutting Disley to go out there and sign Parkinson to that. I would not expect Colby to come back. Colby, Noah, Disley are all going to benefit a bit from this being a free agent class that's not tremendously deep for tight ends. So the people that'll be paid, even though it's a devalued position, will still make a nice little chunk of change. Are they going to be up there at some of the other positions at 10, 11, 12, 13 million? Maybe in Fant's case, but not in Parkinson or Disley's. They still will get into that 3, 4, 5 million a year per at least, I would think. And that takes them beyond the cost of, I think, what Seattle's looking to spend here. Now, I will say, Addicted, that we are down 3 tight ends right now. And Grubb liked to run a lot of 12 personnel with the Husky last year. So you're going to need to get those bodies from somewhere. And it's not like this draft is insanely stocked with tight ends at the moment. So it's possible, but it depends on Parkinson's cost coming down. Galgi, Brandon, set up the call line. I would do that. There is a lot of little hesitancy with me doing that, though. There's been some other YouTubers I've talked to that have had some issues with that have gotten their channel impacted. So I'll be doing that for the members on the channel. We'll be doing a call-in show this month for sure. I do that once a month for the members of the channel, but I've got to be careful on the kind of normal stuff we're doing with this stuff because somebody came on and did something inappropriate. It could put the channel in some problematic spots. King Bomber, you should do the PFN simulator for that mock. I'll do a PFM one. We've done some PFFs, so let's do a PFNs. That's on my final mock here with this one. Not my final mock, but my mock today we'll do. Because I've done a bunch of the PFF ones, so we'll do the PFNs to get a little bit of a different flavor. You gotta taste them all. Taste the rainbow. Beyond Balance, thank you for the $2 donation. I appreciate you for that, Beyond Balance. He says, so sad about Uncle Will. Love that dude. Loved him a lot as well. When he first came out, it's a guy that's there's sort of those lessons to be learned at times. And definitely it's one I still look at when looking at guys that change positions at times in college. Haven't had as much time in a given position. This guy barely played any tight end coming out of UW and tested really well at the combine. Great numbers. Just a great build on him for the tight end position. And the former defensive lineman was just really awesome in those first 2 years. And you just thought, boy, the upside we got on this guy, we could just get him healthy. The upside we got on this guy. And I don't know if he ever fully came back, but he still was a really good player for you. He'd go out there and do all the dirty work for you on Sundays. That stuff that there's no stats that chart it. He just goes out there and gets it done. And I loved Will too, man. Really good tight end, one of the more solid tight ends in our history in Seattle. Is he top 2, 3? Maybe not. But is he still one of the better tight ends and what he brought for his time here? Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Beyond Balance. Garth Knight, thank you for another $5 donation. And we'll do that mock here in just a sec, Garth. He says, if number 3 goes to Hollywood, Russ and Pitt, who will be his Kevin Nash and Scott Hall in Vegas? It would be Adams and Crosby for sure. I think that's how you'd have to do it, man. Crosby would be Kevin Nash for sure. Devontae Adams doesn't exactly fit the mold of Scott Hall, though, does he, Garth? They might have to go out there and get themselves a ringer for that role, Get them one of those old school Raider type mentality guys. I don't know who that would be, but if Russ comes out, Russ just comes to the first Raiders press conference wearing an NWO jersey. Wearing like huge sunglasses. Hogan's like, didn't Hogan do Garth? Didn't he do the dye his beard too at that time? Like the crazy ass beard dye. I'd love it. I'd love for Russ to own his inner villain. That'd be great. And Vegas makes sense, man. It makes sense. And I'll tell you this, man. Raiders do have a history of having quarterbacks come in that are elder statesman quarterback who come back and find a little bit of magic, a little bit of life. Guys that you think are ready for the scrap heap that find that last little, explosion before the lights kind of go out on the career, so to speak. So maybe. Never know there, Garth. Never know. All right, we'll get that mock going here in a second. Jeffrey A. Thistle, thank you for the $5 donation. Anyone stop to ask if Sean Payton had any success without Drew Brees? Feel like that could be a Bill and Tom situation. Very well could be, man. Very well could be, Jeffrey. Hell, you say Bill and Tom. I think you could say it too a little bit, maybe potentially with a Pete and Russ. That was also that it sometimes is that perfect marrying between the quarterback and the coach to give you that lightning in a bottle that you get that Peyton had with Brees or that Belichick had with Brady. And I think that's a fair question to ask when you do look at where the track record has been with Sean Payton and who else he's had there. I think it is tough with Sean and I'm not a guy trying to go to bat for Sean here, Jeffrey, but it is tough with Sean when you make that assessment because he's not really had the quality of a quarterback there that, could equate to a guy like Brees. But that was also a thing that you could say about Bill too, right? Where it's like, yeah, the quarterbacks they brought in, weren't up to the par of Tom Brady from even an ability standpoint. But then at least I think with Bill, you go, yeah, but Bill, you had the Mac Jones part of this to where you got to kind of pick your next guy and it didn't work. Whereas with Peyton, you go, did he have that opportunity really? Did he have that chance really? Maybe not. But Peyton's going to have to, for as brilliant as he may think he is and as he's able to do, he's going to have to show it now because he's in reputational rebuild himself a little bit with this Russ situation, and it's not a great reflection on him. It doesn't look like, I think, of how he was trying to kind of formulate it, Jeffrey, where, man, I was just given this quarterback who just sucks now. What can I do with this guy? I don't even know what I'm supposed to, look, everybody look. Look at this guy. Look at this guy that I have. What do I do? Oh my God, it's so hard, right? I think that's what he was trying to present, and I don't think people were buying it. Especially it doesn't seem like they're buying it here in the chat as far as some of the comments I'm reading about it. And so it's on him now, man. It's again back to the same thing that I said with Russ at one point. I'll say this to Sean Payne right now. Be careful what you wish for. You might just get it. Okay. You got your shot now. You got all of your excuses. You got your dead money to sit there and basically wash yourself in for the next year of excuses. And we go, what can we do? We have $58 million of dead money, $62 million of dead money hit. What do we do? We can't do nothing about it. What? Well, eventually those excuses drop and you got to just make it happen. Thank you though, Jeffrey. I appreciate you for that on the donation. Lowrider Chev, do you think we will hold on to Bobby Wagner this year? I think so, Lowrider. But the team hasn't given a real clear indication about which direction they're looking to go with that. I think that they have set themselves up in a nice place here with the cap and what they could do with their own free agents, where if they want to sign Leonard Williams, they want to sign Bobby Wagner, then they wouldn't have to be maybe as active in free agency to fill vital holes with stuff, and then they could sit there and play the compensatory game a little bit. But we just don't have a good enough feel of where the new regime stands with Bobby Wagner and whether or not he's a fit for this system or not. I would if it was me, but hard to say at this point. Very, very hard to say. Philip Kessel says, yes, mustache. I can just see it, Russ in the press conferences, Well, if you're on the Raiders, I guess instead of it being Go Hawks or Let's Ride, it'd be like, Let's Raid. Raider Nation, let's raid. And then he's twisting the Raleigh Fingers mustache. Raiders Nation. And he's got like an indignant look on his face, Raiders Nation. Let's raid. And he whispers it. This is getting better the more I think about this. Russ has got to go down this road. Philip Castle, what do you think about the Louisville running back? I don't know if I've looked at the Louisville running back yet. Louis? I do not know. All right. So that's Isaac Guerrero. Looks like he's got good size to him. Ran a 4.33 at the combine, 1.55, 10-yard split, explosive as hell. But I have not had a chance to quite take a look at him yet. I'm growing through right now. I'm knocking at about 3 or 4 prospects a day right now. So definitely grinding through, but he's on my list. I got all of his numbers here presented in front of me, but just haven't had a chance to get to him quite yet. Nick says Russ should go full beard, just completely shave it up. Do a Fitzpatrick thing. Go down to here. Mr. Kane says, Hawks Nest, I'm sure you've done this already, but how would you rank the quarterbacks in the draft? Say the top 8. My top 8 quarterbacks would go as follows. I have Caleb Williams, number 1. Number 2 is Drake May. Number 3 is Jaden Daniels. Number 4 is Michael Penix. Number 5 is Bo Nix. Number 6 is Spencer Rattler. Number 7 is JJ McCarthy. And number 8 is Jordan Travis. I'm much lower on JJ than many people, though. So, but I'm going to own it at this point, Mr. Kane. My valuation is what it is, man. Brian Myers is Russ with the Sam Jackson dome look. Well, then he just, for no particular reason, needs to have like the eye patch on to just put it all together, even though he's not got it just to come out for the look. Millet does, thanks for answering my question, homie. Anytime, Millet. Anytime, man. Thanks for watching. Beyond the tequila rift, if he goes to New England, man, the irony, especially if he has one last big go with them. Football's crazy like that, man. There are some weird endings to careers that you would never have thought was possible, but end up happening. Zorn 76, yeah, I wouldn't want to spend on Jordan Brooks either. Addis the Gamer, I don't think that we go for Patrick Queen. Brooks is a possibility if they're trying to play the compensatory game, and they seem to be higher on him than I am. But I think Queen's going to be too much at $18 million or so a year. It's too much. Ringo says, why would you remove an injury clause if that's the deal they signed, let alone the guy whose claim to fame is paying guys to injure people? It's a great point, Ringo. Russ should say good riddance. Yeah, I don't think Russ guy I think bad to feel about. No, he shouldn't waive his injury guarantee. It was a ridiculous request by the Broncos to want it. It's not the way the NFL works. And they were being silly in that respect of it. 100%. It's part of why it's such a bad look on them with this, you know. Philip Castle says, Russ Raiders, let's raid. Twisting mustache. Your boy Michael, first stream in a very long time. Sorry I've missed so much. Senior year of high school is coming to a close and had to get a lot done. Well, you say senior year of high school, your boy Michael, and it's like nothing left that need to be said, man. You know what I mean? You get to experience that one time. I wouldn't expect it to be watching me yakking on a podcast. You know what I mean? You get one run at that, man. You get one run at that. So enjoy yourself, and hopefully it was a great year. My last year was spending as little time in class as absolutely possible. I was not prepping up for college. You know what I mean? Addis says, either way, I still think we get a player from the Baltimore defense 100%. I do too. I think more Jadeveon Clowney, Geno Stone, Kyle Van Noy. These are more of the likely guys versus Patrick Queen, I think. Those guys are just going to cost so damn much. Too expensive. Brian Myers, Russ in Vegas. Let's roll. Let's roll. And then he does the dice move. So he's like, Raider Nation, let's roll. But then everybody starts mocking him because they're like, looks like he's jerking off. Looks like he's just trying to do the dice roll, but it looks like he's jerking off. And another meme is born. You got Russ with the green screen doing the dice roll, and then people just go crazy with it. Jay Stern, thank you for the $5 donation. Any under-the-radar signings you think the Seahawks may make? Oh, it's a great question. I think the Jadeveon Clowney one's one that not a lot of people are necessarily talking about. That'd be a great under-the-radar signing where he's not going to make a lot of money. He's not going to be, I think, even a wave one free agent. He tends to be a guy that has to wait kind of long in the process to get signed. But that would be, I think some pretty under-the-radar, good value signing within that. They would be really value more than under-the-radar be value signings for me, Chase. You know, it's going to get a guy like Glasgow from the Lions that can play a variety of positions on the offensive line and provide some insurance when you come up to the next draft and who you got to pick and how much you got to go after getting guards and centers to get your starters in play. It's a guy like that. It's a Ronald Darby from the Ravens last year who was brought in off the street and was able to fit into that defense with McDonald very fluidly and work really well and is going to get kind of like a vet minimum type deal. It would be something along those lines. If the team wanted to go a little bit harder and spend a little bit more money for a guy that would be under the radar, again, that's not being talked about a lot, I think a guy like Robert Hunt with the Dolphins, for instance, a guard that's very mobile and can move in space and can fit to what this offensive scheme wants to do, could make a lot of sense. And again, comes back to freeing them up tremendously for when it comes to what they can then do in the draft, what they have to do then in the draft versus filling potential needs that they have in the draft going into it from that other end of things, Chase. So I would more be into that place of things. I think, like I mentioned, Kyle Van Noy, another former Ravens guy that not a lot of people are going to be hot to trot on, but he just went out and had maybe the best year of his career under Mike McDonald's defense. He's a guy that's been that jack of all trades guy that it's all about how you use him. It's all about your understanding that he can do a variety of different things rather than fitting him into a prefabricated role. That's another kind of guy that would be an under the radar signings. You're not going to spend a lot on him, who brings a lot of bang for the buck value when you go and get him, though. So kind of more into those modes right now, Chase, when I look at this free agent market as it stands right now. Though the Seattle definitely has enough cap at this point to go out and make some splash signings if they want to go a little bit harder, as they do stand now with the 10th amount most of cap space currently, according to Sports Track. Tom Eden says Russ's new Vegas tagline, happiest casino on earth. Just the right amount of wrong. Zorn says stick with let's ride, just add a F it on top. Tommy, I wouldn't mind seeing Russ make it to the Pro Bowl next year and stick it to the Donkeys and Peyton. I wouldn't either, man. That'd be hilarious. Can't help but feel a little bit he wasn't done the best in this situation. Addis, I wouldn't mind bringing Bobby back if he fit the defense. I wouldn't either. I think it makes a lot of sense. Dave Kramer, send Russ off to Canada. Remember, he's too short. Well, work for Flutie, Dave. King Brandon, can we sign any free agents after May 2nd that won't count against the compensatory formula? Yes, that's the way it works. I think that's the date. I forget where it is actually at as far as that date goes, King Bomber, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood where after you wait past a certain date, I think it used to be June 1st. I think they lowered it down. But after a certain date, then teams can start to sign guys. And what's sometimes nice about this, King, is you can tell a guy, hey, and he goes, what? We like you. Okay, we'll sign me. It's like, no, we'll sign you for what we're going to sign you right now, which is more than what anybody else is offering you. But we want to wait until this date to bring you in so it doesn't count against our compensatory value. So you do see sometimes teams play that little game with it as well, is where you get kind of a wave 2 guy in wave 3 of free agency in that non-compensatory offset spot. But yeah, that's the way it works. You get the extra down the line a little bit. Garth Knight, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you for that, Garth, and all your donations today, brother. Says, it would be cool if Sierra would escort Russ out onto the field and pull off his robe, exposing his game uniform like Elizabeth would do for Macho Man. Russ would be like, oh yeah, Sierra. That's how I look. Look at my gun, Sierra. Oh yeah, we're going to go out and throw the football a long way. We're going to throw it down the football field. We're going to make it, oh yeah. I'd be with it, man. Just embrace the theatrics, Russ. That's all I'm saying. That's all we're saying here with you, Russ. Spice it up a little bit. Everybody's like Robot Russ. Everybody's like, you're playing a little too, like, let it flow, man. Embrace your inner crazy out there. I'm with it, Garth. She does it all like totally smooth, like Elizabeth would, and he just comes out and like, oh yeah. Thank you, Garth, for the $5. I think we're giving Russell some pearls here today. I just hope he's listening. As the Gamer says, where do you guys think Joe Milton will end up? I think he still ends up, I think his high end point of landing zone in this draft's the 4th round. I think the likely landing spot's 5th round. I don't know which team, but that's, probably about where it would be. Chris is the Troy back, vital. I wouldn't mind for a third back special teams guy. No, he's good. He's a good player. I have looked at that kid. And he's fun. 5'8", 215, 446, 153, so he's really explosive. 2,700 yards and 25 touchdowns over the past 2 years. Nice little low center of gravity on him. Kind of like a little Porsche out there running around on the football field is Kamani Vidal. And that's a hell of a name, too. Man, that's a running back name. That's a running back name if I've ever heard one. Tommy says, I could see Russ as Sam Jackson from Pulp Fiction coming back with a vengeance. He's got Sean Payton sitting in the chair. And I will take speed with furious anger, with great vengeance and furious anger, those who would attempt to cut or release my Russell Wilson. And you will know I am the greatest quarterback in the sport when I am off your team. Misfit, you should have a man crush on Brian Thomas Jr. He's awesome. He is awesome. Misfit Tyrell Dotson, Queen, and Brooks would be nice. I don't know too much about Tyrell Dotson. Chris says Russ with the Mark Davis haircut would be sweet. Oh, no. Visit the savings from Lockett alone would allow us to pay a top linebacker and help re-sign Williams or get Wilkins. But yeah, probably. Greg, I have not had a chance to look at safety Didarian. I don't even know if I have a Didarian on my list. Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Boy, Texas Tech kicking out some defenders this year, Greg. I've got them on my list, man. For sure got them on my list. 441, 152. Really explosive numbers. A lot of explosive numbers this year from some of these guys. So really good to see. Where the safety position historically, Greg, in recent years has had a lot of guys up around that 4.65, 1.62, 1.63, 10-yard split, 35-inch vert. You know, that's been kind of the territory on some of these safeties lately. But he is on my list. I got him marked down, and I got his numbers all put together, so definitely planning on taking a look at him. 4 days where I'm getting through, Greg. 4 a day I'm knocking out right now. I just crossed over 200. Seahawks gaming, we are probably the youngest team in the league after letting go of Adams and Diggs. Yes. I think we were the third or fourth youngest team last year in the NFL, and you will definitely be, this year going into it, probably the youngest team in the NFL. Chris says Jonah Jackson from Detroit would be cheaper than Hunt. He would. He would. I don't know if he's as good as Hunt or as much of the scheme fit from the mobility standpoint that Hunt is. Seahawks blue and green, I don't mind losing Lockett because JSN can take a spot, needs more playing time anyway. Shoring up that defense and the interior offensive line is more important. Makes sense. Add us the gamer, Brandon. Who do you think we get as our tight end? Well, I think we're definitely drafting a guy, and we're going to be signing, I think, a guy out of free agency. We might be drafting two guys, quite frankly. So we probably sign one guy in free agency. I don't know that's going to be a high-priced guy. But probably one of those low-end kind of signings you'd look for. And then you draft a guy that's probably in the higher side of the draft somewhere. Maybe it's a Tavian Sanders, maybe it's a Browers, maybe it's Jaheim Bell, who the team has met with, who I think is the fourth or fifth tight end in this draft right now. So there's a couple guys there you get. Then you go just go and get an undrafted guy like Westover as sort of your third guy. You roll with two rookies and a vet at that point. Something like that. Robert says, did you already go over the cap implications for not using a post-June 1st designation? Yes. But Robert, the long and the short of it is just this. You were in a situation that's a predicament, Robert, from the standpoint of 2025. You were coming into this day 28th in as far as your cap space. So when we talk about putting dead money on the books for 2025, you were not in a good position to really do that versus where we can see the cap right now this year. You could sustain the full cap hit this year because you are in better cap situation as it stands right now than you look in the foreseeable future in 2025. John made that call, and I think on top of this, Robert, comes into the play of why go all in on this year when you don't know what this year is going to be. You have a new coaching staff. You have on both sides of the ball, new stuff. You've got to implement that. That's going to take time. The likelihood of this team being ready to go into contention next year is not necessarily high, especially given the youth that I just talked about, how young they'll be. So it's better to take the hit today rather than take the hit tomorrow when maybe a time that you want that money because then the team is ready at that point. And I think that that's the long-term outlook on this, Rob, that they have on this one. Good to see you in the house, brother. Hope you're doing well. Ketan says, where do you think Tanner Bortolani gets drafted? And if so, is it possible that Seattle might select him? It's absolutely possible that Tanner goes to Seattle at this point, Ketan. I haven't had a chance to do my deep dive evaluation look at him, but when I've looked on my kind of initial view of it, and sort of the surface view of it, number one, he's played all 5 positions on that offensive line in college and played them all at a reasonable level. So you're talking about ultimate versatility with this guy across the board and where he can play and what he can do. He tested out better than any other lineman in this draft in his overall testing numbers, from short area quickness and movement to his 40-yard dash to his 10-yard split. It was all very, very legitimate. So Tanner's a guy that really fits well. And again, this is at the onus now, where the new offense you're bringing into this has got to be able to move, and you've got to be able to get out there in space and make it happen. So you need guys that can move in space. And no matter where you put Tanner, he's going to be able to move in space. He's going to get to those predetermined blocks that you have drawn up in your scheme that at times over the last couple, I don't know where he would go yet in this draft. Until I do the deep dive, I'm not going to make my call on take him in the third, take him in the fourth. But he absolutely elevated his stock in this past combine. And there's the guys that can move more than getting guys that are beastly, can blow guys off the line and just absolutely just decimate people. Where can you get the guys that can move in space and get to these blocks where you can create numbers games to one side of the field and really open up those big explosive plays? Ringo says, does seem like Russ is destined for the Raiders. He would like Vegas. What else are they going to do? I mean, if Pittsburgh has indicated that they're out on him, and then Atlanta is focusing their sights on Kirk Cousins, the amount of destinations becomes limiting. Washington a couple months ago might have looked at it as a potential option, but with a new coaching staff and the availability to just go take a quarterback by where they're picking in this draft, it kind of removes them off the table as well. And so now his options start to pare down, because not every team that needs a quarterback is going to want Russ, even at the vet minimum deal, because they just don't see themselves in a place of being ready to go and compete like that. So the Raiders do seem to kind of be the inevitable one here, Ringo. I don't have another team that stands out to me as one that would make a whole lot of sense unless he's going to go to the place to be willing to be a backup. That's the part of this where you think he's probably not going to be willing to want to go anywhere to be a backup. So that does remove quite a few off the table of possibilities. Seahawks Gaming says, I know the Seahawks fans have PTSD trading for safety, but I want Antoine Winfield Jr. all day, every day for me with Winfield Jr. gaming. He's one of my favorite players in the sport. He's come along, I think, tremendously. You can use him in a variety of different roles. I would be highly supportive of the move if they signed him, Seahawks Gaming. And the nice part with that is that you don't have to really trade for him at that point. I don't think that the Buccaneers are going to put a franchise tag on him. I don't think they have the cap space necessarily and where they're standing to do that, depending on what happens with Baker Mayfield, of course. But I would love it. Chris says, Macho Man always sounded constipated. Oh, yeah, I did. I'm going to be constipated. I'm going to get it out. I'm going to get it out so good. Yeah, he did. Yeah, Romo with the cone drill of the combine was cool. Brian trying to get below four flat on the 3 cone was a really cool thing to see. It's he's had a great pre-draft process on top of just 2 excellent seasons of production, and it's great to see how he's really elevated because, you know, Harrison and Neighbors are as good of receiver prospects as you will find coming out in a draft, and a lot of people have Romo neck for neck with those guys, and I think it's completely appropriate. Chris Theo Johnson's really warmed up on me as well too. I didn't love the tape initially with him. It was good, it was solid, it was okay, but he's come along, and I think he had a great Senior Bowl. Obviously tested excellently at the combine. Another guy that's had a really good pre-draft process. Immortal EOTech, all the Bronco players they got from the Russ trade are free agents. Yes, but of course the value of that trade, Immortal EOTech, was not the players you were getting. It was much more the draft capital. The players were just kind of the garnish. DVD-B, do you think Grubb will split time at running back this year, similar to Detroit and the way Montgomery and Gibbs would split? Yeah, I think that's basically the modern nature of the beast anyway at the running back position, DVD. I don't even think it's really a schematic thing. It's as much of you want to keep your running back healthy throughout the course of the year. There's some guys that are the unicorns like McCaffrey that'll find their way to stay healthy through, or Derek or Henry that can just kind of shoulder the whole load and they can pull it off. But the better way to go to keeping your back healthy throughout the year and keeping your running game still at its maximal effectiveness, I think, is to keep the running backs carries kind of split a little bit. I do think Walker ends up taking more carries, but I do think you find a way to get 100 to 175 touches back to Charbonnet as well into this offense, especially if it's running right. So yeah, I do believe that that's going to be the case. Walker will get a lot more potential, I think, with this offense, but no doubt Grubb's going to want to use them both. So the Seahawks game is John Schneider's about to build the best running back room ever, signing Austin Eckler and Saquon. Oh, geez. Maybe Tennessee might have a use for Russ. Maybe Atlanta. I don't see Tennessee. They've got two quarterbacks already in play. Does Russ want to try to fight out with Will Levis there? I don't think that offense is really a fit either with what they're going to try to do there. Hope Castle, Marshawn Nealon. He's good. Seahawks have met with him. I can only find one bit of game film online of him, so I've not been able to find much with him. But it was cool. Seahawks game in the Bucs tagged Winfield. Damn it. Another dream dead. Malik Neighbors didn't run, Garth. He's in that Malik Harrison spot where he's so solidified in his draft status that all he's got to do is a pro day. It's one of those kind of things, you know? Like Thomas needed to go out there and put what he needed to put up to solidify himself as a first round guy. Neighbors was already, the tape is like electric. It's easy, right? He's fast though. He'll be fine. Brian says mock draft today with one trade back. Murphy, Bebe, Kitchens, Trotter, plus a 25 first. Ooh, I'll take that. Jason C, yeah, Jamal being cut was expected. Did Wilson deserve it? Yeah. This is if you want to determine that you need to be the highest paid quarterback, you need to be the highest paid player at any position. A lot of these cuts that are going down today have to do with players making sure they're getting paid the utmost of the money that they can be paid. Quandre, Jamal, Russ. I'm not knocking those guys for being that way. Get your money. It's a short career. Got to get your money. But then when a team is going to look to move off of you because of the financial constraints that you create by asking for all that money, it's then not that team doing wrong by you. It's that, look, this is the nature of the beast when you have a salary cap and a finite amount of money that you can spend in the NFL. So I don't know if there's really not. Sean Payton didn't handle this with much grace or aplomb, and Russell definitely didn't maybe think it all the way through and what he wanted to do in this situation. And, pride and egos driving it all the way around in everybody's camp on this. And, I think everything's is what it is with it, Garth, Mike Evans just signed a contract extension, I think yesterday. Big monster contract extension. Oh, yeah. So the Pro Football Network is the one we're going to do. Let's knock this out. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's light this candle. Let's light this candle. So we've done some PFF mock drafts. I think it's time for a normal. Let's go with a different one. This is the PFN mock draft simulator. Garth said I get to do one trade. I'm with it. We'll go 7. Draft speed. Normal. Let's go fast. Okay, let's just try that. Oh, this will take forever if I do that. No, we're not doing that. Yes, I want it fast. 7 rounds. Here we go. One trade. That's all I get. Ooh, okay. So I can do 16 and 78 for 36, 40, and 67. I don't like that. Oh, I don't like these trades. I go 26 and I get 57. We'll take this one. We'll do this. There's my one trade. I pick up an extra second rounder. Sure you guys can see this. I get one trade. What do you mean you guys no trade? You wouldn't do this trade? We got to do this trade. I get the second rounder. I only got to go back 10 picks. Saying no deal. Gar says I get to do one deal. Who do I got on the board here? Oh, shoot. Where was my trade? I lost my trade. I can get it back. So we got Latu, Jared Verse, Mims, Brian Thomas, Johnny Newton, Troy Fatano, Powers. Still a lot of good guys on the board. I think if I drop down to 26, I can still get something good. So let's do the Washington trade. We'll go this. Wait, not the Washington. What was the one I was doing? Damn it, I knocked my trade off that I had there. It was the yes for the Bucks. That's right, it was the Bucks trade. Boom, boom. 16, 26, 57. I think they wanted me to give them. Wait, we'll do that. Trade rejected. There we go. 233, 26, 16. Accept. Okay. There's my one trade. I'm not doing no more. Earth only let me do one on this. Oh, we got Johnny Newton sitting here from a value standpoint. I got Wiggins, Cooper DeJean, Keon Coleman, Bo Nix, Graham Barton. So I could do Johnny Newton here. We got Michael Penix sitting here as well. Okay, what do we do? What do we do, kids? Well, Graham Barton's right there as well. That's definitely a pull right now. Johnny Newton or Graham Barton. I'm seeing a lot of Newton. We got Newbin on here too? We do have Newbin on here. Wow, there's a lot of good picks to go through on this. Whew. Penix is getting some love. I only get to do one trade, Mr. Kane. That was the agreement today on this. We'll do another one with multiple trades in the next one. Barton, BPA. I don't know if Johnny Newton's ahead of my Barton, though. I think Barton, I have a higher upside than I have Newton. I'm going to go Barton. I'm feeling Barton on this one, man. We re-signed Big Cat. Yeah. I think we're re-signing Big Cat. So I'm going to do that in anticipation of that. All right. We're in the second round now. We got Cooper Bebe, Cameron Kitchens, Jalen Polk, Michael Hall, Jatavian Sanders, Ben Sinnott, Chris Jenkins, Peyton Wilson here on the board, Junior Colson there as well. Wow, we got a lot of really good options here. A lot of really good options here. So I think this one comes down to Cam Kitchens. I don't have Peyton Wilson ahead of Junior Colson. They're kind of smoking crack for that one. So, do we go with Colson or do we go Kitchens? Kitchens kind of feels right, doesn't he? Braden Fisk, I don't know on Braden Fisk here in the second round. That's a little high for me with him. We got some Jatavian Sanders love, huh? That's an option. Definitely an option here. Cooper. We go Cooper. We went 2 guards. You know how mad the chat's going to be at me if I went 2 guards in my first 2 picks, guys? I'm with you, though, but BPA. Yeah, BPA's got to be it. Well, who's my best guy here on the board? Okay, so I got to be honest. I love Cameron Kitchen's game. He's got a lot that's like, that's a lot like Ed Reed. There really is. I like Jatavian Sanders too, but I don't think that his upside is as good as Cam Kitchens, and I don't think his upside is as good as Junior Colson. Colson is probably the best player available on the board for me, though Cooper Bebe's right there. For going pure value, I mean, that's really down to those two guys for me. I like Jenkins. I like a lot of these guys' names. I like even Trice, but King Bomber says Colson will be there at 76. Okay, that's another thing maybe worth considering. Yeah. All right. So, okay, we're going to get back with Colson. So, okay, we'll go off Colson. I did Colson in my last mock. Let's move off of him. We do need tight end help. There's no denying that right now with Jatavian sitting here. Ben Sinnott's nice too, but the second round's just a little early for this. Okay. Braylon Trice, I've got a first round grade on him. If you get him here at 57, that'd be tough not to grab, but man, this is a tough mock. There's some really good options here. Yeah, we can come back and get middle linebacker later. Okay. I'm taking too long on this. Braylon Trice is kind of the highest value I have on my board for this because I have a first round grade and you're getting him late in the second round. But man, these other guys are right there with it. All right. I'm going Kitchens. Trust and upside. Don't hate me. All right. Coming back here now, we've got some middle linebackers. Junior Colson's gone. King Bomber, you lied to me. Lied to me. Someone took him. No, they didn't. There's Junior. Okay, he's better than those two middle linebackers. Is he better than Ben Sinnott? Yeah. That's an easy one. All right, come back now and it's actually a little bit easier at this point. I could double dip and go Peyton Wilson and Junior Colson. I got my safety already there. I could come back and there's Trotters there as well. But I think the guy that I'm going to go for here is going to be Ben Sinnott. Complete tight end, can do it all. He's kind of my this year Sam Laporta he's very close in kind of what he brings, I think, as far as what Sam Laporta does. I'm going with that. All right, back up here. We got Dwayne Carter, 3-tech, Mason Smith, 3-tech, Jaden Hicks. I could double dip on my safety class right now if I wanted to there. Brandon Coleman, Shamari Thrash, Theo Johnson, Tanner Bottolini. Oof, not loving as much these names sitting here looking at me right now. Dwayne Carter wouldn't be bad value, but I think I like a little bit more of the potential upside here in Tanner Bortolini and his ability to move. We got Luke McCaffrey in there as well. That wouldn't be a bad spot to pick from. Xavier Thomas, Eichenberg. Okay. Yeah, we're in the fourth round. Let's come back and take Tanner. Go back to the offensive line, dip around twice on that, make sure we're taken care of. Come back here and look at what we've got. So we've already gotten one tight end in Sanut. We can get Jaheim Bell, and he could be our move tight end. Let's get a couple of young guys. I kind of like the value of that here in this spot. I'm not a big Justin Ugaboogie guy. Katan Oladipo is a fun player, but I think I like a little bit of the other upside to this. Eichenberg. I'm not a big Eichenberg guy. Joe Milton's here in the fifth. Let's see, if you take Milton here in the fifth, that wouldn't be the worst of things to do, maybe. I don't like Milton, though. We got Edifon in the 5th. Boy, I think that's great value. You get Edifon Oluofoso. Let's do it. I think he fits to this new scheme really well. Where did I just see him at? Go with Edifon. We lost our pick there. Dal Holker, we need another tight end still. Milton's here, so Milton's an easy one at this point, isn't he? Boy, AJ Barner's here and stuff too, though. Boy, okay. We can still probably come back and get to the tight ends later on. Let's go with Joe Milton in the 6th. That's good value. Can't argue with that value. And that will take us out because we trade our 7th round pick. So you got me on the final one here. We got Graham Barton and Tanner Bortolini will be what I added to the interior of the offensive line here to kind of fill that out. Cameron Kitchens is now a guy that, again, go back. I mean, you might think with Ed Reed and the comparisons there, they're not valid, but go back and look at Ed Reed's, for instance, his numbers coming out of the combine. Eerily similar numbers to these two guys coming out of the combine. And ball skills are there with Kitchens. Ball skills there with Ed Reed. Both of them in back-to-back years showed that coming out. Really, really, really fun player to watch and a complete player on tape. He'll hit you. In fact, you might have to ask him to dial it back a little bit. He's so damn physical in that. Junior Colson, for me, to get him into the 3rd round at that point would be tremendous value. Ben Sinnott, I don't think he's going to be as good as Sam Laporta, but to get him in the late 3rd round for a guy that gave you very close to that, I think that's very helpful. Edifon Oluofoso, I think, will be a starting middle linebacker or will linebacker in this league. So pair him up with Colson, and you got two guys that can run for days, who can do it all from the position, tackle, cover. Love what those would bring to the table. And then Milton, there's really not a bust factor there with Milton on that when you're picking him in the 6th round. That's Flyerville. You're not typically getting much out of guys into the 6th round range of things. And so that's the definition of a buy low. Hopefully get something great and productive off the other side of it. So that was a fun little mock simulator site. We'll do that one again. And on the next one, I think what we're going to do is a heavy amount of trading. I think the next mock draft we do will be an attempt to really try to maximize the number of picks, do a lot of trading back, and see how many guys that we can really fully accumulate. Gar says, that's a draft right there. I'll hope for this. Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Chris Dylan Johnson, he's a little bit tough to factor in where he's going to go. He didn't have a good combine. I don't think he's at his full health, but I think he ran like well over a 4.6 40, and the burst wasn't as much really there, but his tape's really good. Tape is really, really, really good. Mega Lucario, Gabe Hall in the 5th wouldn't be bad at all either. That's where I've got a value point at him for. So if they grabbed him there and if that was the way they went, that'd be all good. Okabuki, I just didn't quite love the tape as much. I can see some of the flashes and some of the athleticism that's there and readily apparent. He looks really good as a stunter, but just didn't quite like the consistency from him on tape. Brian says, no defensive line makes this week, I'm afraid. I would have loved to have found another defensive tackle in there a little bit. Didn't get to address it. Hopefully we will, in my presumptive scenario, we would have addressed it maybe in free agency a little bit. But I didn't jump there as much. I do feel like with the 3 tech, it's not as much a pressing need, especially if you do sign Leonard Williams. I was operating from a draft standpoint that we had signed Leonard Williams, or at least brought a defensive tackle in to fill that role. And I think when you're already sitting on Leonard and already sitting on Draymond Jones and Mike Morris is coming back, you're 3 deep pretty strong there. And was Jaron Reed and Cam Young aren't quite enough at the nose tackle, I don't think that you're far from there in solidifying that either. It's just about filling out the rotations as much as anything to getting kind of the star quality, I think. But I can understand. I would have loved to have addressed the defensive line a little bit more in the draft. Ringo says, never heard of any of these people. You've lost me. I'm sorry about that, Ringo. Again, I think Cameron Kitchens is probably in a lot of people's list, the 2nd or 3rd best safety in this draft. Barton is a top 50 player on pretty much every consensus board that I've seen. Same thing with Junior Colson. So to get him at 76 is excellent. I think Colson's your best middle linebacker in this draft. So I think if the draft went in this way, I would walk away from it saying that the Seahawks got the best free safety in the draft. They got the best middle linebacker in the draft. And they potentially got the second best tight end of the draft when it's all said and done. Would be, I guess, in shorthand way of saying there's sort of where the upside would be. Chris says, I'm a heavy trader, not happy unless I get 9 to 10 guys. And I love going that route too, Chris. I think it's a great exercise to show you, you can have this or you can have that. You can balance it to this or you can balance it over to that. And it gives you the full kind of view of what you can possibly do. And I've been waiting to do that kind of mock draft, but that will be the next one I do. Is we're going to go hog wild crazy and see what we can do as far as trading back. It seems this one's maybe a little bit more realistic than the PFF one is on trades. So maybe we'll utilize this one again as the site for that when we do that. Because I'd like them to be as realistic as we can get. Mervin says Milton is a sleeper pick. I think he is, Mervin. If he gets pushed up into the sort of that third round range, it starts to be a little bit funny money spot for him. That's not where he should go. But if you're able to get him into that 5th, 6th, that buying low on a guy with actually a lot more upside than you would typically get from a 5th round quarterback, I think that there's a lot of potential value within doing it that way. So I would completely be with it. AI says May. King says, I think Newton in the first, then Baby in the second might have been slightly better. I would have been okay going with that route. I won't be mad at it if they go that route, Bomber. Newton was a guy like Colson. I went back again. It's about the 3rd time I've gone back and looked at him again. And he is a very fun player, but a guy that I'm still into more of a 2nd round range and where I've got him placed. I don't have the 1st round grade any longer on him. There are times on tape where he disappears. He's not necessarily 1st step quick. He's kind of 3-step quick, which is good in itself, but that doesn't necessarily mean he gets instant quick wins. A lot of times the quick wins have to come off the violent swim move is basically his one way to a quick win. There's just a few things with him in his game that don't have me all over the moon on him with. I still like him a lot as a prospect, but just a little bit of some worries on him. Taylor was down low. He has a Thorpe Award. Kirian, I don't like drafting tight ends because rookies tend to be extra bad. Good rookie tight ends are super rare. Better to look in free agency. Indeed. I think the thing that makes our situation a little bit different, though, Kirian, on that is that you have 0 tight ends on your roster. So you're not going to go out there and sign 3 guys in free agency to fill out all the positions for your tight end. You're going to draft a guy in this draft at the tight end position somewhere. Maybe it's a later guy in a later round, but somebody will be picked in this draft for sure. I don't know, man. It's definitely where it can be hard to find value from tight ends early on. Some of this, Kirian, also comes from how have the drafts been recently for tight ends? Have they been good or have they been bad? Have the guys coming out not been particularly very talented or been very limited in how talented they are? And I think rather than it being that rookie tight ends aren't good coming out, what's the reality of this is that it's been that the recent draft classes with tight ends has been exceptionally weak. And year in and year out, when I'm doing my personal evaluations on these drafts, I'm finding the tight end position to be the weakest in the classes. But that doesn't mean that you can't find a good rookie to go out there and perform well for you very quickly. Case in point, Sam Laporta just went out there last year, not as a 1st round tight end, right? But as your 2nd round type tight end, and went out there and set records for receiving as a tight end. So it's really more about, are you in a given year where there's the quality of tight end out there worthy of being picked? Are you in a year where there's the tight ends are really weak and there's not much talent to be had? And I think that that's even still a little bit of the case in this draft where it goes Bowers, Jatavian Sanders, Ben Sinnott, Jaheim Bell, and then you kind of do get a little bit of a drop off after that point. So even that thing that's been going on for years is kind of afflicting this draft a little bit to a degree, but that doesn't mean there aren't still some good guys in this draft that can go out there and get it done. You Mad Bro says, what do you think about the Hawks signing Jenkins, who was recently released by the Dolphins? I don't know a lot about Jenkins. I was asked a little earlier about him, so I'm not really well aware of his game too much. I watched some Dolphins games, but I didn't have a chance to scout him coming out too much, so I don't know too much about him. He looks like he's still a pretty decent player. And the one thing I'll say about the Dolphins situation, you Mad Bro, is that they're having to make decisions right now because of their cap situation, not just merely because the guy's good or bad and not worth it here anymore. It's more of, we got to slice and dice. We got to take the hatchet to this and not a scalpel to get this into the right place, especially if they're going to get a Tua contract extension done this offseason. Father first. I wonder if we'll go after Watkins. Which Watkins? Ringo, I still don't understand the salary cap and cap hits and whatnot. No, we released 2 really highly paid players that aren't very productive. Do we get to do a big free agent signing now? The cap is eminently complicated, Ringo, so it's not an easy one to understand to the point of that being a lot at times. Yeah, in short answer is yes, you have money that you can go out there and now spend at this point. There is, when you're releasing guys, Ringo, in the NFL, you're not ever releasing guys free and clear where they're due to be paid this amount. Their cap hit is this amount. You're going to release them. You're going to save all of that money. You release them and you save some of the money. You save a big majority of the money, but there's always an encumbering hit that comes with it. So all of these guys have a little bit of dead money hit that they're going to carry with them, even though cumulatively between them all, you're saving money. You do have money to go out there and spend. You don't have to necessarily go out there and spend it now, this offseason, during the season. The NFL has a rule in place, Ringo, where unspent cap money can be rolled over to next year. For instance, I believe we're rolling over about $5 million into this year's cap from last year's cap. So if the Seattle wants to more position this for 2025, they can do so as well. You're not really fit to a spot that you're going after making these releases is what I'm trying to say. You have a flexibility to kind of go down a variety of different paths. Kelly says, will we start to hear about us being interested in Seahawks free agents a few days before free agency, or would the rumors start once it actually starts? Is it possible we try to secure Leonard? I do believe that the Leonard Williams negotiations will be going on fervently over the next couple of days, Kelly. You'll hear about a little bit of stuff on maybe Sunday, but I don't believe that anything's going to really happen until you get to Monday, where you get that's your tampering period and teams can really start going, and that's where you're going to start hearing stuff. So I will be going live on the beginning of the tampering day on Monday morning. I think it's like 11 o'clock. And we'll be going live covering the action at that point. Stale, what's up, man? How you doing? How are you doing? Well, we're going to start to put a little bit of a button on this one here today, folks. I am going to be coming back tomorrow with a specific show that I want to take a look at. And it's going to be a show that's going to be a little around Jamal Adams a bit on this. And it's just a show around lessons learned off of this Jamal Adams trade. We talked a little bit about Jamal today, about what happened and how this all got caused and what occurred. But I also think, like with all situations, when things go wrong or bad or don't work out correctly, that it sometimes isn't just a matter of happenstance, but there can be some poor decisions that have led you to getting to that spot of things. And it's very important to try to consider on this stuff, how do we avoid those decisions going into the future? So tomorrow we're going to be taking a look at 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, the Jamal Adams trade, why it happened, why it broke, why it didn't go right in our favor, and again, how we can avoid this kind of pothole in the road again in the future so we don't bust our tire, so we're not off on the side of the road waiting to go get a ride. You know, we can stay on the road, stay on the trip, stay on our rise, and keep it going. Randall McDaniel finishing us off right tonight with a nice $5 donation. He says, chance we get aggressive and target Big Daddy Wilkins. He and Leonard could be paired or redundant, thinking we spend money in the trenches. This is that flexibility part that I would offer to Randall comes into play here, where you have a variety of different places that you can go here. They are sitting on, as I'll show right here, Randall, you can see you're now sitting on the 10th amount most of cap space in the entire NFL right now as it stands. So if you want to go grab a Williams and then make another big splash signing with Wilkins on top of it and pair the two together, you could do so, Randall. You absolutely could do so. And it would eat up a lot of that cap space. You wouldn't have a whole lot of money in a lot of other places, but you could definitely put those two big dogs up front, kind of create your wall of Williams and Wilkins, and it would be pretty cool. It would be a pretty cool way to go, honestly. Wilkins is more of a one tech than he is a three tech. Wilkins is more of a one tech than a three tech, and Williams is more of a three tech than a one tech, Randall. But both of them can do either job, which would definitely appeal if you're talking about McDonald wanting to create those versatile fronts that can do a variety of different looks for the opposition and throwing them off, especially in protections and whatnot with that. So the money is there to do it at this point with the kind of cap space that you have created. I don't know if they would double dip like that, Randall. I think that they would go Williams and then just offsuit the rest of the assets to other places on the team that they want to build up, especially considering you have positions like tight end where you have three guys that you're down right now, or middle linebacker where you're down three guys right now. You got a lot of guys to fill out that roster. There's somebody else was saying above on the chat, you've got some Swiss holes here on the roster as far as just filling out literal bodies, getting enough guys on there to be good to go. But if they wanted to go that route, they could go that route, Randall, and it would be fun. And I'll tell you what, you'd be a lot better stopping the run. No doubt about that. The A and the B gap runs would come to a stop and right quick. But you're going to be paying probably $15 to 17 million per year for Williams, and Wilkins is probably about 22.5 to 23.5 million per year. So you'd be sitting, you've got $50 million of cap space right now. You're going to eat about 23 million of it to those two guys if you signed them. Green says, "Oh, praise the football gods. Jamal's officially gone. So stoked. Didi's gone. Didi's gone." Snail says, "What do you think about Devin Leary in later rounds?" I like Devin Leary. He had another guy that did a really good Senior Bowl. I thought that he looked good in there throwing step for step with the other guys. He's got really good mechanics. I do like a lot of his lower half in that he really can work from the bottom up there. He's not just a kind of arm thrower. Everything's in pretty good order as far as that goes. He is 6'1", 215, so he's a little bit smaller. He's very quick with his release on the shorter throws, but the longer throws, it does take a little bit of a time to come out. It's not that it gets elongated. It's just kind of more of, you feel that lower half really torquing up and amping up to get the arm out, which tells me that the arm strength isn't exactly there. But he can move really well. I think he ran a pretty good 40 time at the end of the day. Keaton Slovis was better. He's okay at 480, so he did okay. He throws really well off platform. There's some things that are nice about him. But I see him as more of a potential league backup kind of guy as his upside, because of the fact that I just think that there's going to be some arm strength limitations there with him when it's all said and done. But he throws a good ball, had a good Senior Bowl, had a good combine. I think he is going to be a guy that will be drafted somewhere 5th, 6th, 7th round in this draft. DVDB, do you think the first McDonald defensive meeting, he prevents the infamous locker room cigar picture on the big screen, laughing out loud? I certainly wouldn't be opposed to him doing that, DVD, and I would, if I was a coach, be looking to maybe present something like that myself. Like, if you guys think that this is okay, if you can't look back at this in retrospect and understand at this point that this is not going to be acceptable in this locker room, then you better get up to speed real right quick. There ain't going to be a look like this again in my locker room as a head coach. End of story. Act like a pro. So possible. I'd be open to it. Bomber Brandon, do you know if signing Disley will count against the compensatory formula, or will he be considered an all in-house free agents or not a free agent at all? If you sign your own free agent, it doesn't, even if you've had to go like it's gone here. Well, no. Okay. So the way it works with this King Bomber is he's not a free agent because he was released, right? So the compensatory system does not account for players released from contract. If a player has been released and he's not just a street free agent who's come to the end of his deal, it does not factor back into the compensatory system. So it wouldn't, even though he's our own free agent, but it doesn't because he was released. If we were signing Quandre Diggs from a team that just released him, wouldn't count against the compensatory system because he was a release. It also may give you a little bit of an indication, King Bomber, of who they're looking to then target in free agency if they're going to want to play the compensatory game, i.e. players who have been recently released. Wilbur Knight, salute to you too, man. King Bomber, also, is there a date where you can sign free agents where it won't count against the compensatory formula? Yes. I don't know off the top of my head what the date is, May 2nd, May 3rd, somewhere in that territory, inside of June 1st. I'm not sure which date it is, but yes, you can get past a certain point of free agency where then when you do sign what would be a street free agent, it will now not count against the compensatory system. Of course, then the players have bled out the door at that point a little bit, King Bomber. You don't have as good a talent to go through. You're picking through wave 3 of free agency at that point, but indeed, yes, sir. It does not then count against that compensatory angle of things. God's Gang Forever Mobin. Thank you for the very, very, very kind $10 donation. I really, really do appreciate you on that. It says, good day, Brandon. Just giving you a heads up. This is Corey Olson. Just changed my YouTube name. I like the releases we made. Who's going to play safety now? Would Trey Brown or Bryant potentially play there? Well, thank you for the $10 donation. I really do appreciate it. God's gang, very much. And we're going to kind of start to put a little bit of a wrap up if we can on this with the questions and stuff. So as we kind of put a close to this, we'll be coming back in a day. So if you do have some other further questions, guys, let's pick it up kind of tomorrow about 5 o'clock if we can on that side of things. Well, I like your new name, number one, Corey Olson, and thank you for that $10 donation. I think right now it's a little bit up in the air as to who's going to be the free safety at this point. It's free safety, strong safety. Strong safety is where Kobe Bryant's played prior to this. He's not played particularly well in the strong safety role when you featured him there. He wasn't necessarily particularly really playing well in the slot aside from causing fumbles on that side of it either. I wonder if maybe the outlook on the team is going to be able to move Kobe Bryant back to outside corner where he was in college. I would believe God gangs forever that that's more of the pathway of where you would look to put him at this point. He's in the mix as maybe a strong safety in there, but I don't think that he's going to start for you. I don't think he's going to play well for you at the safety position. That's just not his position. Trey Brown has never played safety before. I don't think 4 years into his pro career at this point, 3 years into his pro career at this point, you're going to look to now move him to safety as it is, especially for the fact that, he's had some issues tackling, and those issues don't get on less display at the safety position, but get on more display at the safety position. We'll see where Trey Brown's future is going to be with the team at this point and whether he does fit with what the team's going to want from the position, but I don't think either of those guys are the answer there. I don't know if we've got the answer at either position long-term on this roster right now, God's gang forever. I think it is very highly likely that we go and we draft a guy in this upcoming draft, and we probably take a guy very high. That's why you can see when you look at my current mock draft that I just ran, I took a Cameron Kitchens from Miami in the second round, is because there's definitely now a drive for you to need to go draft a guy very high and go and get a guy that have really good quality for the secondary. You're not sitting necessarily on good quality as it stands right now. So you're going to have to address it come hell or high water one way or another. And I don't think it's in-house. I don't think Jarek Reed's the answer. I do certainly think Julian Love is going to have a lot of opportunities to make some hay this year in the system because of his past familiarity with the system, but you need two guys. So you only got one. You need a second guy. I don't think that guy comes from free agency. I think you got to draft that guy. And I don't think it's either of those two guys who very well in both guys' cases, God's gang, might just be in a position of kind of a man without time, a man without a role, a man without a spot on this particular team in this particular scheme. Those were guys drafted for the prior scheme, and the prior scheme is much different in its requirements of what it wants from the players than what this scheme is wanting and requiring from the players. Bomber, so if we sign Eric Kendricks, who was released from the Chargers today, that wouldn't count against the compensatory system. Correct. Released players do not count against the compensatory system. It is only pure free agents, guys that have reached the end, the culmination of their contract. They have fit through every last year of that contract. Now they are free agents. Then those guys are the guys that count. So Phil Haynes, naturally street free agent, right? King Bomber, Damian Lewis, right? End of his contract, natural free agent, you're not releasing him. Will Disley, you've released him, didn't come to the end of his contract. That's not a free agent. They're technically free agents in name, but in how they got to the free agency is how it factors into the compensatory system. Snail says, why did we not shit can Ivan the Terrible? Well, if you look, Snail, at the recent report card that was given out for the Seattle Seahawks team and what was good and what was bad, I'm sure you've seen that thing that just came out the past week where all of the players do this internal polling for this, whatever site it is that they're doing it for, or whatever outside service it is that they're doing it for. And you get a lot of variety of different grades. And so you get the grades for, your in-house this and how's your travel facilities and how's the food and how's the training staff and how's the weight room and the weight room staff and all that's part of how it factored in. Seattle got graded very high in the weight room staff by the players and their outlook of it. So even though we've got the Ivan the Terrible nickname established onto Ivan the Terrible, it may not seem that the players have that nickname established for him and that they may be a lot more higher on him than we would appear to be as a fan base with him. Ringo, we just defer the cap for 10 years and sign Jones, Wilkins, and Young and promise to pay them later like Otani? Is that allowed? You can technically do it, Ringo, but you would be committing sort of seppuku for your future cap space. You're essentially trying to win in the now to not have a chance to win in the later. And I don't think that there's any team that's going to be willing to do that. The thing with the Dodgers and deferring the money, Ringo, is that they don't have a salary cap in baseball. So you can defer money forever, and it's really only at the cost of the owner in the long term. It has no effect on actual salary cap. it's technically allowed, but no team would do it because the cap is involved here. King Bomber, the amount of picks awarded to any team via the compensatory system formula is 4. If we were to theoretically get comp picks for Williams, Brooks, Fant, and Lewis, could you sign free agents to offset any other free agents like Parkinson, Dallas, Bush, and Haynes? Oh, that's a long question, man. I think you're going to start to try to unpack a little bit of this, King Bomber. And the thing that I would tell you on this is that you'll start to ask kind of impossible to answer questions when it comes to this. The compensatory formula is known by no man. So I can give you a guess and I'll give you an educated guess, but I'm not, as I always say with educated guesses, based upon very little nothing, but just sort of here's what my sort of gut feels about it. You always find me when we talk about Brandon's gut going, well, unless I feel real strongly in my gut, I don't like to just lean on gut. I like to lean on actual knowledge and understanding of what is what. Yes, if you lose those big dogs and then you go and sign free agents that are at the level of a Parkinson, at the level of a Dallas, at the level of a Bush, right? I.e. kind of the bottom end kind of guys, not big time contracts, but the lower end spectrum of deals. That is the basic way that the offset would work. Parkinson goes and signs a $5 million deal. You sign some other tight end that you like for $5 million. But all of the other contracts that you talked about with Williams, Brooks, and Fant and all of those big deals that got handed out on the other end, those still exist. So the offset comes between Parkinson and the $5 million deal that you gave to the other player. It would not then be affecting the top line guys that got paid out on the open market to then pull back the compensatory on this. And I do know, guys, it's really, really difficult on this compensatory thinking, Bomber. It tends to be, I'll just warn you, one it spins people a little bit out and like they can't quite get their foot pinned down on understanding, wait, how does that, and I don't think I do really a great job on this and necessarily fully explaining it because it is so very like complicated. There's the secret sauce, secret squirrel NFL understanding of like, what's our process that takes us through to coming to spit this number out of what team gets that and what team gets this. So it's definitely one that I would highly recommend sort of sitting there and going into the details of the NFL and how the literature that they've put out there in regard to the compensatory system. But just to think of it in basic terms of this, okay, let's take out the players that move, okay? I have 4 players that are free agents that go get $10 million contracts a year. Every single one of them, 4-year contracts, $10 million a year. Let's just keep it simple and easy, right? 4 players, $10 million a deal, 4-year contracts. Those guys get signed out there in free agency. Now I have other guys that have lesser contracts signed. I go out there in free agency and sign a guy equal to those contracts. I still have that other stuff that's the offsetting factor. I still have that other stuff that's like, you know, carrying the day and like, you know, this here's the stuff that we're going to get the compensatory stuff back for. Do you get the full 2/3 and a 1/4 and a 1/5? Because this is the next question I get asked, King Bombers. Well, then how many do you get back for that? Again, we get back to like, I don't know, man. That's the NFL thing where they don't release out exactly how the formula works. It's kind of a guessing game with it. But in general terms, yes, you would still be getting back the 4 picks to your original question on that. It does take all of that occurring though, right? You need the 4 guys signed up at the top. You need the lesser guys to be signing decent deals down the line. Then you offset the lesser guys down the line deals, but you still have the over the top stuff sort of carrying through a little bit. And last question. If you were to let go of Williams and sign Wilkins, does that equate on the comp formula? So it's basically like bringing Williams back. So Brooks, Fant, Lewis, and Parkinson. Yes and no. Again, it is so complicated on this one, King Bomber, man. There are so many little ins and outs on this. Williams is going to get like a $17.5 million deal. So if Wilkins goes and signs for what I'm thinking is going to be more of a $23.5 million per deal, right? That's not an equal offset at that point. Now you have a $7 million difference. Now, by the way, the NFL is going to view it again in the general terms and again in that secret squirrel thing that I don't really understand completely how this fully thing works. This is where it's hard for me on this to answer these questions. There's a $7 million difference that gets up accounted for, okay? So what I mean by that is that then you signing Wilkins, the NFL very well could look at that situation and they say, that's Williams and Fant for Wilkins, right? Like, this is where we come to that, like, you're going to try to add it up in your numbers of like, well, the numbers will be like this, but there's that secret formula thing that I talked about, because it's not just about what the guy signs for. It's also about how those guys play and what their prediction is the next year. And it's a very, very, very complicated. But no, unless it's dollar for dollar an equation, unless you're getting an exact player to exact player, apple for apple, no, it's not enough in itself. And Williams, though he's going to get a close contract somewhat to Will Wilkins, is that we're talking a $7 or $8 million difference, means that's going to pull one of those additional players off of your compensatory stack at that point. DVD B, how much are we saving from letting DJ Dallas go somewhere else? DJ Dallas is a street free agent. Street free agents are not on the books right now for any money. So there's no savings to be had for street free agents. If a guy comes to the end of his contract, he's just at the end of his contract. He's already off the books. He's not currently accounting for being on the books. So could there be some compensatory value for DJ? Maybe like a 7th rounder, but I don't even know if he gets signed out on the open market. So no real savings there. James, how many people would you have a problem with cigar smoking think it have been? James says, how many people would have a problem with the cigar smoking thing if it had been after the season and you had won the division? My feeling on it is that nobody should be smoking a cigar in the locker room unless you're winning Super Bowls. And if you're out there celebrating things like playoff wins or a big win in the middle of a season or getting to a division, winning a division, then that shows that there's a little bit of a low expectations in what you're seeking to attain to. You know, very hard to carry a mindset of a champion, I would argue, James. It's very difficult to do that. And it's not one that can be done unless you've got your eye on the prize, where you are on point with what you need to be doing. And if you're looking for reasons to celebrate, if you're looking for celebrations and the things that aren't worth celebrating, you don't got your eye on that prize. That's why that smoking thing was such a huge thing. And James, there was plenty of former guys from the Legion of Boom days that talked up at that time about the fact that they didn't like watching that. That was not a good look. And when champions are looking at those guys smoking cigars, telling you that's not a good look, we got to take that at face value at that point. It wasn't a good look. Nobody should have been smoking those cigars. That was stupid on their part. King Bomber says, yeah, perfect. I was wondering if the offset would happen to the Parkinson in the $5 million deal. It's wild. Yeah, it's a system that's unlike anything else out there, really. And again, the fact that they don't let us know how the whole system works makes it kind of hard to kind of explain it too. Cause it's like, I think it's this. I kind of think it's that. Emar, lots of stuff with the compensatory thing. Haha. I appreciate you explaining it. Well, hopefully I got there with it. Sometimes I feel like when I end up explaining it, I might make it more confusing than it should be in how I explain it. Hopefully I got it kind of around there on that. Cameron Bird, I haven't looked into McDonald's defensive scheme in depth. How best would you describe his style? Multiple, varied, unmarried to a set schematic style that's, how can I put this? It's not a style. Let me put it like this, Cameron. So you're coming from a 4-3 under over whatever defense with Coach Carroll, and he wants to run the cover 3 90%, 95% of the time, right? You have a scheme married to a coverage system, and we're going to run front 4, and we're not going to blitz. There's not as much of that hardline style in what you have from Mike McDonald's system. It's more versatile. It's more flexible. It can kind of be everything and everywhere. It can be blitz heavy. It can drop into, it can run with just 4-man fronts. It can be attacking, but it's about a defense that really the centerpiece, Cameron, is just trying to confuse you offensively. The old defense was not trying to confuse you at all. This defense is trying to confuse you to a maximum level. And so that means what you see is not what you're going to get. You're hopefully going to cause a lot of confusion on the offensive side of the ball post-snap from what they thought they were going to get pre-snap. And these are diametric differences from what you, of course, got with the old Coach Carroll scheme. But it's really sort of kind of an amoeba defense, if you want to think about it. You know, it can be anything and anywhere. It can base a lot of its styling to going after the weaknesses of the opponents. It's not just going to line up and say, this is who we are, this is what we're going to be, and that's how we're going to do it. It's going to be like, how do we attack this particular team? What are the ways that we can hit them where they're vulnerable? Garth Knight, thank you for another $5 donation and all of your donations. I appreciate you for that, Garth, as we will kind of wrap this on up here, folks. I appreciate all these questions. I love the passion here on this, but we're going to bounce them back tomorrow. So I'll be back in less than 24 hours. You know what I mean? It's no big deal. Be back in 24 hours. Be right back. Garth, thank you for the $5. Says, I consider mastering the compensatory game in college, but decided to step down to rocket science for a better quality of life. Yeah, it's way more complicated than it needs to be. Like, it would be easy, Garth, if it was a compensatory system that was just based upon the actual numbers, where it's like, okay, this guy got signed for $10 million, and now your guy got signed for $10 million, and you signed this guy for $5 million, and you have $5 million left over, and so that should equate out to about a 4th round pick. But then there's the playing time that equates in, snap counts that equate in, how effective were they? Did the guy you sign in go to the Pro Bowl and give you this? That then kind of factors in as well. That's that secret sauce part of it that's just, they've made it, as the NFL does in almost everything they do, way more complicated than it needs to be. And that's I don't know why, but it has been the case, Garth. That's for sure, man. Thank you, man, for all your donations tonight. I really do appreciate you for that. Garth says, Pumpkin's back on the perch. All's right in the world. She is. She's looking for some love. She's a little annoyed with me right now. That's why I want to kind of wrap this up too, because I know she's looking for some loves. DVD says, do you think the cigar pick was a large part in the decision to let Pete go? I don't think it was a large part in the decision to let Pete go, but I do think it was a thing that's included as to, I don't think that the players are listening to Pete's. Like KJ Wright talked about this on his show this year, where he said, the locker room's tuning out Pete. And KJ talked about this a couple of days ago about how he got blowback for that, for being honest about that. And it's the truth. And Pete didn't have to like it, and people could be angry about that, but that's the truth. The whole thing getting pissed off when the truth's being spoken to me is always one that I'm like, well, then too bad, so sad. You can do something about it, or you can cry and whine about somebody speaking about what's going on. And that kind of situation happening like that, as I've said, where I showed 2 different pictures in the Pete era, where I can go back and show you, pick the 2 pictures that I think tell story of 2 different places of where you have a team and where their spirit is and what's guiding those teams and, what they're holding to as far as their value system goes. And I think it was very, I'll grab them right here. I'll show you guys. I did this before, and here you have a team that's just missed the playoffs. Season's over with. Happy as can be, smoke their cigars. Oh yeah, I'm sure it was for the baby. And then here's the team that you got in 2012 that just lost the game in the Falcons in the playoffs. Which group of players look like they are care and are engaged? And which players look like they're happy to be pros and they're just, everything's all just woo, woo, woo. You want to be a champion? Look at Cam Chancellor's face right there. You want to be a champion? You got to care that much. This isn't a game you just win by talent. This isn't a game you just win by, we kind of want to get there. Kind of would like to be, it'd be nice if we could kind of get there. It's got to be in your soul to want to get there. And even then, you might not get there. But you sure as hell ain't going to get it when you got guys that missed the playoffs that are feeling like this. Big smiles, puff away, flash your set. Yeah, I think this was a factor. I don't think it was any determining factor, but to say that this means nothing or to try to just loosely push over the top of this like it's nothing, it is something. And champions look at this picture and they'll tell you it's something. I go show this picture to Ray Lewis and I say, Ray Lewis, this was a team that just missed the playoffs, final game of the season. They're smoking cigars in the locker room. What do you think about that, Ray? And I'll ask it again. If this wasn't such a big deal, where are the vets? Where's DK Metcalf? Where's Bobby Wagner in this picture? Where's Quandre Diggs? Why aren't they in this photo? If it's okay. It's not that they're smoking cigars. I could care about that. It's that it's emblematic of a mentality at play that was on wide display on the football field throughout the year. Specifically, that point being that you had a team that was checked out. You had a team that was not all in for their coach. And that's what that picture is emblematic of. It's not just cigars being smoked. It's a team with the mentality they're bringing to play that's not one that's going to bring you anywhere close to a championship. Ketten says, I think it was pretty silly that people were upset with the cigar. He was celebrating the birth of his child, which in my opinion is more monumental than any Super Bowl win, not throwing heat at you. No, I appreciate where you're coming from, Catan. I don't buy the child excuse thing. The child thing was born last week. So Catan, why didn't he smoke cigars in the Titans locker room when they was in there? That was after a victory. Why didn't he smoke this? Your child was born earlier that week. So if you're celebrating the child, why wouldn't you do it in the Titans game? The reason why, Catan, is because the excuse of the child thing was brought up after there was heat brought upon Julian Love for the fact they were smoking cigars. That's what we call damage control, which again is another example, Catan, of why it was such a bad thing that they did it. The fact that Julian Love had to bring up the damage control of, no, we weren't, no, it was for my baby. The reason he's bringing it up is because it's, again, part and part example of why it's not good to be doing that. It's a bad thing that they're doing that. The other thing with it, I'll say, Catan, is there were multiple Legion of Boom members that were also pissed at that look and what they were seeing from it. Were they wrong to be mad of it? I mean, do maybe the players themselves and seeing that understand that's not a good thing, guys. You shouldn't be doing that. It's not a good thing. It's not something to get raged over or to lose the mind over, but it's an emblematic point. It's something that stands out of, here's a symbol of what's going on with this team a little bit, of the mentality at play that's broken right now, that's not working right now. And it's not to say it's just Coach Carroll's fault on it, it's just that it's not working. This thing is not moving right now in a proper state. If we trade Wool and Anvil, I don't think we're getting any more than a late third round pick. I don't believe. Kieran says, I'm officially have the beer for bye-bye Jamal party I'm holding. Sounds good, man. Gar says, honestly, this Gar stuff don't bug me, and frankly, I wish they lost that damn game. Probably would do in retrospect, huh? Your opposition would be a little bit more tastier. That's for sure. Oh, you're still on. Dogs were mean mugging me to go do their business. They got it. When they got to go, they got to go. And I understand that folks aren't super big on the cigar thing. I'm not trying to make it as too big of a point. It's just, for me, it was something that definitely sat with me of, oof. On top of a lot of things that were discouraging this year, that was kind of an exclamation point at the end of the season that was not needed. You know, it was just the timing of it and all that stuff couldn't have been at a worse stretch a little bit, you know? Yeah, I'm definitely not looking to move Woolen either, Catan. I think they're going to roll with him in the future, and we'll see if McDonald can get the tackling stuff going. He's new to the position. He's just kind of gotten in, so we'll see. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up on that note now. Thank you guys. I appreciate you watching today. Just kind of a quick in and out 3-hour show, real fast one. We'll be bouncing back here tomorrow, looking a little bit at the trade of Jamal Adams and maybe some lessons to be pulled away from this trade. Some stuff I just want to discuss in particular in regards to that. A little bit separate of today's show, even though it kind of goes into connection with today's show just a little bit. Catan says, I'm pretty high on Woolen. He's still young, plenty of time to learn, develop into a better tackler. He has the talent, just needs the finesse. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you give the guy time. He's new to the position, like you say. And if any guy, you give him a little bit more room for them to get the tackling stuff figured out, it'd be a guy that's just recently been moved from offense to defense. So let's see if he can do it. He does have the good size out there to get it done. And McDonald's certainly going to drive a lot more of training camps. I think that'll help him get a little bit better on the technique, a little bit more of a hard charging training camp, so to speak. Yeah, why be mad, bro? I don't think they're trading Woolen. Hoying Grenade, B, when I'm moving to San Diego, I'm going to be going to San Diego in late April. I'm going to be moving just before the draft. So the week prior to the draft, I'm going to do a couple day trip to get down there, but we are all good to go on that. So we'll be doing the draft coverage from my new location. I'm looking forward to it. Flea says, if it took Pete Carroll a whole decade just to release Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, it took Pete Carroll a whole decade. Carroll was still coach today. He would have kept it. I do believe he would have been pushing to keep them, fleece the Mac. Yeah. Agreed. Kieran says, the fat lady had finished singing and they were caught wanting, broke out the cigars. It's the smiling and flexing that sits with me more. Yeah, my thing with it is just smoke the cigars away from the building at that point. Don't have yourself in a place where you're going to be pictured. It's going to be pictured. It's going to be a bad look. Be aware of that stuff as a pro. Understand how things will look at it. It's just like you're at any job. I'm in my office at my job and I start busting out cigars. Let's just think of this through a little bit, right? Is that going to fly in your office? No, it's not really a good look here in your office, right? And then the only time you'd really do that is if we close some monstrous deal. Maybe you would do that. That's the thing, is like, you don't just, like, we got this generation. It's again, the generation of participation trophies. That's what I see with this cigar photo. I see a generation of kids raised with do we get to just smoke our cigars now? No, you got to earn it. Do something to earn that, to be standing there acting like you've done something. You know? No, I should just have it. I should just get a cigar and just be smoking cigar now. Okay. To me, and maybe I'm just too old school on my outlook on this. I think there's a dogged mentality. I think there's a special state of mind you got to get into to be a champion. I think it's a really hard one to get into. And I think there's a lot of outs for potential champions in that mentality, for them to take an easy, softer side and way of things that takes them out of that mode and reduces you down a little bit, has you lose a little bit of edge. And maybe I take too much from it, but I do pull away from those kind of things and those kind of moments going, there's a lack of edge here. A lack of edge that's vital if you want to get to that top. This game is too competitive. There's too much parity. If you don't have an edge, if you don't have that right mentality to bring to play, then you ain't getting it done. It doesn't shock me. You could show me that picture and tell me nothing about the Seahawks season and tell me this team did this after the year when they weren't going to the playoffs. And I tell you, well, I can understand why you didn't make the playoffs. I'd only need to see that picture at that point. I could make that determination. And maybe I'm alone on that. And I'm okay with that. Will we get Trey Flowers vibes? Garth, and out in 3 hour, folks. Thank you, Garth. Do you think this release changes our draft needs? I think Snuffalo, this drives you a little bit more likely to take a tight end than you might have otherwise. I think now you're for sure taking a tight end somewhere. Is it early? Is it late? Who knows? But somewhere you're taking one. Yeah, well, it'll be fine. And Witherspoon's going to be special. Kieran, I think it's very likely Jamal's kind of at the end of the road right now on the career. I don't know if there will be another team to pick him up. He'll probably get a team that takes a flyer on him to give him a try, but we'll see if he gets all the way through training camp as being a guy that can reestablish some of that quickness and athleticism back into play. Kieran says smoke in the locker room is definitely rude as F. Yeah. I'm like, just have a Lombardi in the locker room if you're going to bust out the cigars. Otherwise, don't do it. Smoke it in your home, smoke it in parties, smoke it anywhere else you want to do it. Just don't do it there. And I may just be, I'm one of those kind of maybe I'm being kind of old man yelling at the clouds kind of guy with this, but that's the way I look at it. Witherspoon does remind me a little Bam Bam Cam, man. A little smaller form. In person, we got a lot of people that are 12s from all over the world, man. We are a worldwide fandom, no doubt about that. And it's great to see. I love it. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up on that note, folks. I thank you guys for watching. We will be back in 24 hours here. I want to thank one more time the sponsor of the show on the way out the door. That's going to be Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy right now. You click the top of the link in the description section below, that link to Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with them for the first time. Use the code NEST, or click the link below, and they will match you up to 100% of $100 of your first deposit. So $100 on the Hawks Nest from me to you through the Underdog Fantasy app. Win, win, win. Go out there, win some prizes today. They've got some great ongoing contests. You can get into the basketball, baseball, hockey. We got March Madness. Of course, football will be on the horizon this next upcoming year. We got a variety of different things you can get into. Go win yourself a little bit of money as a fan. Earn money while you fan. Not a bad way of going. But Underdog Fantasy kind enough to sponsor this show throughout the course of this year. They're having ongoing prizes going on. Go head to head with your fellow fans out there. Fantasy football, fantasy baseball, fantasy hockey, dailies, fantasy kind of stuff you can do with that. It's a wonderful little wonderland for folks who love to get into that type of stuff. And thank you, Underdog Fantasy, for sponsoring the show today, as you have. I appreciate you guys for watching today. Do me a favor if you could on the way out the door today. Just hit that like button. If you could, sub on up if you're not already. I would really appreciate it. as I said, we will be back in less than 24 hours with a little show just looking again at this Jamal Adams trade and situation and some of the lessons I think that this team can learn from that Jamal Adams situation. But until we're back inside that 24-hour period, I hope I haven't reminded you, but you should be hyped up. Your team just cleared $25 million of cap space to go out there, maybe not go crazy in free agency, but they can do whatever they want to go do. The world is a little bit of their oyster coming up over the next couple of weeks. Stand pat, be conservative, or go hog wild. They can go either direction here now. They can go either plane. So it'll be fun to watch how this breaks down and which path John Schneider chooses to take. But the team has a plan. They've got a philosophy in place. They know what they're going to want to go get done. So I shouldn't have to remind you on this point. You should be hyped. You should be ready to roll with this team going into the future. But just in case you're not, please allow me, by God, to remind you, don't you ever forget. Go Hawks.